of the Beijing Declaration. Gooding stressed that proper nutrition, sexual and reproductive rights, freedom from violence and mental health are essential for women to realize their full potential.
Women's health is one of the 12 critical areas of the Beijing Declaration because women need to be healthy to realize our full potential. This includes proper nutrition, sexual and reproductive rights, freedom from violence, and mental health. Women's mental health and well-being are not luxuries. They are the foundation of activism, leadership, and care work.
Some political parties attending the 2025 National House of Traditional and Khoi Leaders Imbizo in South Africa are unanimous on the recognition of the Khoi and San people. The Khoi and San people are actively seeking greater recognition and rights, particularly regarding land and cultural preservation. The African National Congress NEC member Dr. David Mahlobo says the country can no longer afford to have the Khoi and San being treated as outcasts. Mahlobo was speaking at the three-day gathering underway in Boksburg in the east of Johannesburg.
One of the biggest issues that we need to address without any fear of favor or prejudice is the question of the recognition of the Khoi and San community. We owe it to ourselves. Even before Jan van Riebeeck and others arrived in 1652, the Khoi and the San, they held the fort. They are struggling against colonialism, later in apartheid. They too, under the sun, cannot be treated as a skunk. They cannot be treated as a pariah amongst the nation of South Africa. Therefore, the issues of moving with speed around the issues of legislation is an important matter.
Officials in Nigeria say the death toll in the attack by gunmen on a mosque and nearby homes in Katsina State has risen to at least 50, with around 60 others abducted. The attack occurred on Tuesday in the remote community of Unguwan Mantau as Muslim worshippers gathered for the dawn prayer. Witnesses say armed assailants arrived on motorcycles, opening fire inside the mosque before moving through the village. Several homes also set ablaze before security forces arrived at the scene. And finally, the United States has stopped processing most visas in Zimbabwe until further notice, citing unspecified concerns with the government. According to a notice on the U.S. State Department's website, the pause took effect on the 7th of August. U.S. President Donald Trump's administration has restricted travel from a number of African countries, saying it is working to prevent visa overstaying and misuse. Zimbabwe had a visa overstay rate of 10.57% in 2023. For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo Webe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In our sports headline, Senegal coach Abdoulaye Diallo says Chan tournament is about pragmatism. And Gail Monfils returns to the Auckland Classic to defend his title. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
The 19th of August marked World Humanitarian Day, a moment that's meant to honour those who risk their lives to help others. But instead of celebrations, the Red Cross and Red Crescent movement delivered a grim message. In 2025 alone, at least 18 of their staff and volunteers have been killed whilst delivering aid in conflict zones, including Gaza, Sudan, South Sudan, Ethiopia, Iran, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, many others have been injured, detained, and even kidnapped. The International Committee of the Red Cross says that these attacks represent a grave betrayal of humanity and is urging governments and armed groups to uphold their obligations under international humanitarian law. Well, to help us unpack the scale of the threat and what can be done to protect those on the front lines, we're now joined by Mateo Ortega, who's a spokesperson for the International Committee of the Red Cross. Mateo, thanks very much indeed for joining us and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, very grim news indeed. 18 Red Cross, Red Crescent staff and volunteers killed. And that's not even talking about those who have been injured in the process. Do we know what's caused this rise in numbers?
Look, I think it's, I also think that there is the IRC, the International Committee of the Red Cross, is seeing a growing number of conflicts around the world. And not only increased number, but the increasing duration, causing horrible suffering and growing humanitarian needs. And yes, in this context, humanitarian workers themselves are becoming targets of violence. To mention some of the figures that we have, but just 2024 last year was the deadliest year of record for humanitarians, and this trend continued in 2025. Last year, 2024, we had 38 Red Cross and Red Crescent staff and volunteers that were killed on duty. You know, as you were saying, this was while they were doing their work. And this year, so far in 2025, we have lost 18 of our colleagues.
So, I mean, it's one thing when you get caught in crossfire, but it sounds as if that there are cases where staff are being targeted in their homes and in communities. What does it tell us about, I don't know, the way that these perpetrators are viewing things like humanitarian law?
Look, there is these attacks are not happening in a void. They are an expression of today's shrinking humanitarian space. They are part, unfortunately, of a larger trend of disregard to international humanitarian law, to the principles of humanitarian work, and they're being instrumentalized in many cases with the aid. We think that this reflects a deeply concern that is not only going to impact in the work of humanitarians, of course, but on the people who rely on them. You know, these acts that are not unevitable. They could be preventable if they are not violated by international humanitarian law. They're causing disruption in life-saving operations in compounds where communities are suffering already the consequences of conflict.
How much influence has misinformation and disinformation having on the attacks on aid workers? Because one gets a sense also that sometimes they're unfairly identified as being active in war.
Look, sadly, we have cases from many places around the world, whether it's going to be in the Democratic Republic of Congo, in Colombia, in Myanmar, in Gaza, in Russia, in Ukraine, where misinformation and disinformation is going to lead to spread information, sorry to repeat, that is going to cause problems or attacks directly to our operations, directly to our staff. We have to stop some of our operations for temporarily in many of these cases in order to assess the situation. And this is gonna be at the end that we're not gonna be able to access the people that we're helping, the communities that are being affected. We have sadly everything. You know, it's not only in some cases targeted against humanitarian workers, but it's also the fact of spreading this information, whether it's going to be the misuse of the emblem, for instance, of the Red Cross or the Red Crescent, or spreading information about the humanitarian workers helping one party to the conflict or the other. At the end, what it's going to have is again, not only that is going to disrupt the work of the humanitarians, but the aid that the humanitarians are providing to the communities affected.
You've spoken about the Declaration for the Protection of Humanitarian Personnel. Tell me, what does this declaration call for, and can it make a meaningful change, a difference on the ground?
Look, the Declaration for the Protection of Humanitarian Personnel seeks to unite states, basically in order to reverse the tragic trending that we're seeing. Our calls are first for humanitarian space to be protected without exception in every country. Second, for impartial humanitarian organizations to be allowed to do their work. And third, for the international community to don't look away. Many millions of lives hanging on balance with them, and the stability in many cases, of entire regions and context. So in this sense, there are several states already who are part of this declaration. And again, the call is to respect the international humanitarian law.
In hotspots like Gaza and Sudan, DRC, where the conditions on the ground are especially volatile, what immediate actions would you like to see the governments and armed groups there to take to ensure safety of your staff?
Look, first, I think is that we cannot tolerate the normalization of these attacks and the humanitarian workers that are killed for doing their job. This should not, we should not get used to counting the numbers of colleagues who have been killed for helping others. Now, states and parties to conflict, their direct responsibility for protecting all humanitarian personnel, because the international humanitarian law requires them not only to always protect them, to respect them, but also to protect them. This concretely means to refrain from attacks, from threats, from interfering in their work. And this responsibility, and I think this is a key point here, includes using their influence, states or party to the conflicts, to ensure that others, including partners or allies, also comply with these obligations. In a short sentence will be to be able to do our work, to have the access to assist these people that are already in conditions of extremely sufferings caused by armed conflict and violence.
Beyond armed actors, what responsibility do you see as host governments having to create an environment where humanitarian organizations can operate without fear of obstruction and harassment?
Look, I think will be the same. The Geneva Conventions, the international humanitarian law, not this treaty of laws, this body of laws, is the one that has been signed by every state in the world. Is the one agreement, the one thing that we all agree on. And in this sense, there is the responsibility of the states. Concrete actions, once again, will be to influence the parties to the conflict, for instance, to respect and to comply with these obligations. And in this sense, yes, all states must have it, but specifically for parties to the conflict to respect and protect the humanitarian personnel. This, once again, is mainly the responsibility of states and parties to the conflict.
And perhaps finally, for those listening today, how can ordinary people, whether through advocacy, awareness or support, help protect humanitarian workers who are risking their lives to save others?
Well, as part of the International Red Cross and Red Crescent movement, it's the biggest humanitarian network in the world. The International Federation of the Red Cross, the International Committee of the Red Cross, calls for action of protection of humanitarian workers and the people they serve. Now, again, even if the responsibility is to states and to parties to conflict and the stakeholders, to uphold and to enforce this protection, the visibility of humanitarian work, the fact that we can show what we do, and that is clear in order for their parties to accept the work that we do, it's going to help us to do the work. Every time that we are coherent between what we do and what we say, we create this trust at the end in order to be able to do our work.
Matea, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very, very much indeed for joining us and highlighting this very, very concerning issue. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for your time and for your interest.
Thank you. That's Mateo Ortega, who's the spokesperson for the International Committee of the Red Cross, speaking about the urgent need to protect humanitarian workers who put themselves in danger every day to deliver life-saving assistance.
Gender-based violence is destroying lives and tearing communities apart. It happens in homes, in schools, at workplaces, and too often in silence. But it doesn't have to continue. If you see it, speak out. If you are hurting, reach out. Because doing nothing is not an option. Listen to all 19 SABC radio stations from Wednesday, 23rd of July for hard talk, discussions, advice, dramas, educational shows, and interviews around GBV with experts, survivors, lawmakers, and the whole country affected by gender-based violence. For all your favorite SABC radio stations, call 0800 428 428 to report abuse or get help. GBV, it ends with you. This message is brought to you by the SABC.
Es-tu préoccupé par quelque chose? Es-tu passionné par les questions qui comptent? As-tu une voix qui mérite d'être entendue? Eh bien, nous avons la plateforme parfaite pour toi. Téléphone-nous ou fais-nous un WhatsApp au +27 66 408 87 42 et nous te rappellerons. Sois dans la conversation.
Salut Channel Africa, ici Beno le diamant rouge et Binal Export depuis le Cameroun, le pays des lions. Voilà.
Sois dans la conversation. Il ne s'agit pas seulement de parler, mais c'est ta chance d'exprimer ton point de vue, de partager tes opinions et de t'engager avec une communauté qui valorise ton avis. Suivez-nous sur les réseaux sociaux, visitez notre site www.channelafrica.co.za et préparez-vous à partager vos points de vue sur Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
AUSISA, the Association of Water and Sanitation Institution of South Africa, is a platform uniting Africa's water professionals. This November, Africa leads the conversation on water and sanitation. Join global and African leaders at the AUSISA Africa and Global South Dialogue 2025 from the 9th till the 12th of November at the Emperor's Palace, Johannesburg. From policy innovation, this is where action meets collaboration for a water-secure future. Register today at ausisa-watersan-dialogue.org or follow at Ausisa on social media. Ausisa, working together for sustainable water and sanitation security in Africa. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
A very good morning to you indeed. You're listening to Arise and Shine, and we turn our attention now to headlines shaping Central Africa. And joining us is geopolitical analyst Aaron Ngambi to unpack key developments from upcoming elections and constitutional reforms to rebel insurgencies and mineral finds. Aaron, always good to have you on the program. Welcome to you.
Thank you. Good morning, Peter, and good morning to your listeners.
So, the Central African Republic has confirmed December the 28th this year as the date for its long-awaited general election. President Touadéra, who abolished term limits via a 2023 referendum, is seeking a third term. Please unpack.
Well, it's nothing surprising. We have seen this play out on many occasions in different parts of Africa. Yes, these elections are long overdue. They have been postponed a few times. Now the date is set in stone, December 28th, like you said. Now, President Touadéra is no different from other African leaders that we've seen who've come through a constitutional mandate to serve term limits and then quickly make a U-turn and begin to abolish that and advocate for more terms. So he's definitely going for another term, and we wish him well. But I don't think these elections will be free and fair as we would have hoped or expected.
Meanwhile, in Cameroon, another story, election-related, presidency-related. Opposition leader Akere Mouna has taken the fight to the Constitutional Court to block President Paul Biya from standing in the October elections. I suppose we kind of already know what the legal outcome will be of this. But what is at stake really in this kind of challenge?
I like what Muna has said, the petitioner in this case. He has taken this case before the Constitutional Court, basically arguing that the current president, who's 92 years old, is not eligible to run because he is dependent on others to execute his duties. Basically, he's not even working, because we see that he has missed a lot of important events for the last 6 years. We are told that he was supposed to preside over the High Council of the Judiciary for the past 6 years. He's delegated that to different ministers over the years. He's not been able to do that. And so Muna is arguing before the courts that this is the man whose dependency has been placed in the hands of other people, whoever is taking care of him. And this is against Article 118 of the Electoral Code in Cameroon. If you are not in a position where you physically and mentally can take care of yourself, then you're not eligible to run for office again. So Paul Biya, who is 92 years old, he's wanting another term, which will be his 8th term. We know too well that he's not seen in public. Nobody knows what is going on, but yet his political party and his friends have put him forward as a candidate, and they want him to run again. But we don't know in whose custody or care he is at 92 years old. Therefore, according to this electoral code, he is not eligible. I like also what Muna says. He knows that the judiciary the Constitutional Court might actually not rule in his favor, but he says the right thing has to be done. We have to put the record straight. And I think that is very important.
And then in Gabon, leaders there discussing institutional reform as they shape what's being called a fifth republic. What are the main drivers behind this reform, and how might it reshape political dynamics there? I mean, it's the post-Bongo era, and people partly hopeful, I guess.
Yeah, so this Fifth Republic in Gabon is interesting because, like you said, Gabon had been ruled by a family dynasty for over 40 years, for many, many years. Therefore, this seems like it is a break from, it's actually a relief from, many people perceive the previous rule as a dictatorship. So now this is more of like a consultative workshop and the beginning of what looks like a constitutional reform process. So the new people in power now, these guys that, of course, this guy came through the barrel of the gun and quickly turned that experience into a constitutional democracy. And so he wants to be able to begin the so-called Fifth Republic on a clean slate, and he wants to engage other people, other stakeholders. We see that the European Union are backing this. We have parliamentarians and other leaders in the country that are working together with lawyers and also development partners to be able to revise and look at the constitution and see how they can make it more democratic. So yes, looks like there's light at the end of the tunnel. People are excited for what the prospects look like, but we hope that this is not going to be a case where you have a constitution that has 2-term or 3-term limits, and then after this person serves for those terms, they remove or abolish term limits. So we hope that Gabon will take a different path.
In Chad, authorities have arrested the son of Boko Haram founder along with several jihadists. What are the implications, do you think, for counterterrorism efforts in the region and also for Chad's internal security? Or is this perhaps it's a good thing, it looks like, but will not put a dent on the problems?
Well, Muhammad Yusuf, this I think is about 19 or 20-year-old chap. This is the son of the founder of Boko Haram, who was killed in 2009. And his son at that time, this chap was a baby, was really young. But what we see there, it is interesting. It looks like this cancer of jihadist extremists in West Africa seems to have a multiplier effect. It seems to be something that goes from one generation to another. We hope that this is the beginning of the end of all this, because it's not only Chad, Mali, Nigeria, all of these other countries in West Africa have been victims of jihadist attacks. In fact, this specific operation that happened in Chad was with the assistance of the Nigerian intelligence unit. Therefore, we hope that the countries can work together and be able to defeat the jihadists. But this is a good development. We hope that it stops with the son of the founder of Boko Haram. Now, this is the youngest son, by the way, and he was recruited into this group by his older brother. So we have an older brother who's out there in some province in Nigeria and recruited his young brother, who has now been captured. And so we see that this keeps on to be passed on from one generation to another, and we hope that it can the security forces can put an end to these extremists.
All right, and perhaps finally, Angola. De Beers discovers a new economic development, reportedly discovered a new kimberlite field in Angola. How can this affect Angola's mining sector, do you think, and broader economic prospects? And I say this because oil finds in the country haven't helped the poorest of Angolans. Will more minerals do more?
Well, I think you recall, Peter, that we've discussed in this program a few times about the current protests in Angola. Right now, as we speak, the government tried to remove subsidies from fuel, and that went up a little bit, and that has caused a lot of protests and a lot of trouble in the country. In fact, even people are killed now. What started out as peaceful protests became violent, and the police actually, responded in a brutal way. So we hope that this discovery of these diamond fields in Angola will actually increase the prospects of people getting jobs, because the youth unemployment is high in Angola like never before. We hope that the Bears will be able to strike a deal that is very similar to what they do in Botswana. Botswana 50-50 kind of arrangement between the Bears and the government has a company that runs on behalf of the state these diamond mines. And Botswana has been a success story. They've benefited quite a lot. They've created jobs. But we can't put past this idea that the Bears is just a company that is under Anglo-America, and under Anglo-America, we know that there are a lot of things that have gone wrong in the region with copper mines, with other mines. So fingers crossed, we hope that the Angolan people will get a good deal, very similar to Botswana, and that will create jobs and be able to have a trickle-down effect in terms of the economy.
Aaron, always great talking to you, my brother. Thank you so much indeed for that Central African update.
Thank you for having me, Peter. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. That's one of our regular commentators, Aaron Ngambi, a geopolitical analyst, making sense of events in Central Africa. It's 6:30. It's time for your news headlines. A very good morning to Jwalane Tulongwepe.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Making headlines, the Congolese government says new accounts of atrocities in the east of the country show M23 rebels have not respected the commitments they made in a ceasefire deal last month. Officials in Nigeria say the death toll in the attack by gunmen on a mosque and nearby homes in Katsina State has risen to at least 50, with around 60 others abducted. And finally, the United States has announced additional sanctions on new officials of the International Criminal Court, with the State Department designating 2 judges and 2 prosecutors attached to the Hague-based court. I will have details on these and other stories at 7 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Right, let's catch you up with the first sports bulletin of the morning. And at the desk, as always, is Figile Lingwati. Good morning, my brother.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good morning, Peter. We begin with football news. For Senegal coach Abdoulaye Diallo, the group stage of the Total Energies African Nations Championship CHAN 2024 was less about fireworks and more about pragmatism. His reigning champions progressed to the quarterfinals unbeaten after a tense 0-0 draw with Sudan in Zanzibar, sealing second place in Group D. Away from tactics and numbers, Diallo also made a point of acknowledging the warmth his side received during their stay in Zanzibar. For Diallo, Senegal's passage through Zanzibar was not just about football but about shared passion and mutual respect. On to rugby news. For it's now South Africa. They have added a date with Japan at London's Wembley Stadium to their Autumn International Series, with the fixture to take place on the 1st of November in a rematch of an iconic game from 2015 Rugby World Cup. Coach Eddie Jones's Japan famously beat South Africa 34-32 in what was dubbed the Miracle of Brighton, though the Springboks exacted revenge by knocking the Asian side out of their own World Cup on their way to lifting the trophy in 2019. The Springboks also face France in Paris the following week before travelling to Italy on the 15th of November, Ireland the 22nd of November, and Wales 29th of November on an unprecedented 5-match tour. South Africa also meet Argentina at Twickenham in their final game of this year's Rugby Championship on the 4th of October. South African netball star Kamohelo Masego says she is grateful to sign her first professional contract with London Pulse, England. Masego has been unveiled as London Pulse's new signing, expected to run for the team in 2026 Netball Super League. Masego says she looks forward to playing in a league that will push her out of her comfort zone.
As you grow as a netball player, as you experience growth, you always set goals for yourself. And I think playing internationally has always been one of my goals. It's always been a matter of just wanting to experience that growth and wanting to find a league that will push me out of my comfort zone. So I think for me, playing internationally has always been one of my goals.
Now, tennis news. The ageless Gael Monfils will return to the Auckland Classic in January to defend his title, a year after becoming the oldest player to win an ATP Tour crown. The flamboyant Frenchman, who turns 39 next month, beat Belgian Zizou Bergs in the 2025 final, making him the oldest player to win a tour-level title since Ken Rosewell triumphed in Hong Kong, age 43, in 1977. Monfils, a 13-time ATP champion, a former world number 6th, is the first player confirmed for the 2026 tournament, and the tennis showman remains a huge crowd draw card, capable of pulling off big wins in his inimitable style. Monfils dumped 4th seed Taylor Fritz on a run to the 4th round of the Australian Open in January. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Figile Dungwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Hi there. Do you want to elevate your business and give it a voice in South Africa and Africa as a whole? Well, in that case, let Channel Africa make this a possibility. Channel Africa is willing to advertise your business for as little as 30,000 rands or $1,719.18. To get access to these great rates, send all requests to mokoenata@SABC. That's MOKOENATA@SABC. Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
It's time to take a look at what's been happening in the world of business, and we say good morning to Nosipo Zuma.
Business news on Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. In your business news, Sasawa, South Africa's Water and Sanitation Ministry, Phemima Jodina, is in Lesotho to conduct oversight visits to a number of projects, including the Podihadi Dam, the Senqu Bridge and the Lesotho Highlands Water Tunnel. She says South Africa has invested billions in these projects. The Lesotho Highlands Water Project is a bi-nation initiative between the two countries designed to transfer water from Lesotho's highlands to South Africa's Gauteng province. It involves the construction of dams, tunnels and hydroelectric power stations. Majodina says South Africa is also paying for the water it gets from Lesotho.
We have invested 53 billion for this project, and this project was delayed for 9 years. The cost since then escalated to 53 billion. But also, we are not taking this water for free. We are paying royalties. We are paying hundreds of millions per month for this water. So I want to dismiss the myth that we are just taking Lesotho people for granted. That is not true. We are paying.
Deputy Minister of Transport Mkhuleko Hlengwa has revealed that road clashes cost South Africa's economy about over $11.5 billion. Hlengwa was speaking in Cape Town during a stakeholder consultation process aimed at reviewing the National Road Safety Strategy 2016-2030. The main objective is to address the scourge of road crashes in the country. Hlengwa described the phenomenon as a socio-economic problem.
12,000 lives, 157 daily injuries, 32 deaths, 205 billion rand to the economy every year. So this is a socio-economic problem. We could use this 205 billion rand for a lot more for service delivery and development. This is money that is taking us backwards, with an adverse impact on hospital services, healthcare services, repair of roads and infrastructure. The Road Accident Fund at almost 50 billion rand payouts every year.
A non-profit social enterprise, Harambee Youth Employment Accelerator, which connects young people to jobs and job opportunities in South Africa, says the job market needs to address the barriers that keep young women and youth out of employment. The organization shared this at the Women's Month Media Day event in Johannesburg. Head of research at the enterprise, Victoria Duncan, adds that young people face a few barriers to labor market participation, like data costs and transport, but women face added barriers.
Women experience additional barriers in terms of safety, in terms of the disproportionate responsibility of unpaid care work. And so when employers think about how they're wanting to structure work to make it inclusive, by meeting women where they are and addressing these barriers by providing flexible work or providing transport solutions or decent earnings, they are in fact actually breaking barriers for all young people. So everyone is benefiting.
The Malawi Energy Regulatory Authority has directed that most filling stations should operate between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. to address fuel shortages and illegal sales to neighboring countries. Most of the affected fuel stations have been listed along Mali's border with Mozambique, Zambia and Tanzania. This as the government awaits a delivery of fuel under the government-to-government G2G agreement. Channel Africa's correspondent in Malawi, George Mhangwa, explains.
The Malawi Energy Regulatory Authority has indeed intensified its efforts to say that all those institutions that do not indeed, sell within the required 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. will be, punished. And these filling stations are close to the borders with Malawi, that's Zambia, Mozambique, and other countries.
Air Canada flight attendants have reached a tentative deal ending unpaid work following a strike that grounded thousands of flights over wages and unpaid labor. The union, representing over 10,000 Air Canada flight attendants, said the deal would pay flight attendants an hour before flights on narrow-body jets and 70 minutes on larger wide-body aircraft at half of their normal hourly rate in year one. Now, this will raise to 70% by year 4. Analysts say any gains could influence upcoming contract negotiations in North America. Your financial indicators: $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 532, and Botswana is 13 pula 39. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 325, and in Zambia it's 23 kwacha 29. The BRICS countries: $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 48. Russia is 80 rubles 48. India is 87 rupees 04, and China at 7 yuan 18, and in South Africa $1 is trading at 17 rand 68. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,336 and platinum at $1,335 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $67.12 a barrel. Now, for any business news stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I'm Nosipo Zuma.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live, 5 days a week. G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
Now, the main, in fact, it's time to find out what's in the G20 fact for the day. And the main element of the logo for South Africa's G20 presidency represents the King Protea, which holds a special place in the hearts of South Africans as the national flower of the country. It embraces resilience, cultural pride, hope, and natural splendor. Now, the Protea logo is covered with the colors of the country's flag: green, gold, black, blue, red, and white, representing the country's diversity, its heritage, and cultural vibrancy. And that is our G20 fact for the
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability.
Now, the challenges of early childhood development centres topped the agenda on the first day of the G20 Provincial Education Indaba in South Africa's Eastern Cape Province. The two-day gathering in East London is in preparation for the National G20 Summit on Education, which is set to take place later this month. The sector aims to clamp down on illegal ECD centres and register at least 10,000 centres by the end of the year. Abongile Yanchis has more.
The Deputy Minister of Basic Education, Dr. Regina Mhaule, says they are well on track to achieve their set targets for the early childhood development sector. The sector faces a number of difficulties such as inexperienced teachers and substandard learning conditions. The department has thrown its weight behind the sector. Dr. Mhaule elaborates.
In this 7th administration, our focus is on early learning. So for us to achieve on early learning, we chose to take this ECCD to be our buzzword to be able to enable the department to move forward in strengthening the foundation. And that's where we are going, early learning.
Eastern Cape Education MEC Fundile Gade says another aim of this engagement is tackling low literacy levels in the country.
You will recall that we are privileged as a nation because there's been a debate in the past 3 years that the developing nations have a crisis of learners that could not read and write with comprehension. And flowing from that discussion, then the G20, because we are creating an international platform led by the ministry.
Countries such as Kenya have advised South Africa on how to deal with challenges in the ECD sector. Martha Odundo is from the Kenyan Education Ministry.
The strengthening of that multi-sectoral coordination is very, very important so that ECD is not only embedded in the education ministry or department, but it can scale up and all the players can come in and enforce. For example, I expected, besides the Minister for Education attending, I also expected maybe the Minister from Social Services, from health, because all these are cross-cutting issues for ECD.
The Indaba will end on Thursday, with deliberations on early childhood development centers expected to continue. I'm Abongile Yankees in East London.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability. Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go.
Now, the KwaZulu-Natal Convention Bureau, in collaboration with Millvest Advisory and the city of Mhlatuzi, bring you the 2025 Tourism Investment Forum. And this is a global platform for local action. The Tourism Investment Forum Africa aims to promote secondary and tertiary cities and regions as attractive investment and tourism hubs. So be part of the movement transforming tourism investment in Africa. Join us for the TIFA 2025 from the 27th to the 29th of August at Tembela Venue, Richards Bay in KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa. Don't miss out.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
Now, the 24th South African Association of Public Administration and Management annual conference gets underway this morning in the town of Thohoyandou in the Limpopo province, and that's the northernmost province in South Africa. The event brings together academics, policymakers and public sector leaders from across the country to explore ways of building state capacity, improving governance and shaping policies, all against the backdrop of South Africa's current rotating G20 presidency. Well, we're now joined on the line by Professor John Molepo, who's the Executive Director of the South African Association of Public Administration and Management, to tell us a little bit more. Thank you so much indeed for joining us, and a warm welcome to you, Prof.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you to your listeners.
So for our listeners who may not be aware, and many beyond our continent not familiar with SAPAM and its annual conference, what does this 24th edition about, and what stands out about it?
Well, the 24th annual conference is the gathering of both academics and also public sector practitioners to come and deliberate on topical issues, particularly building state capacity, looking at its prospects and challenges. So this conference gathers annually, which will take later this year in September, from the 21st until 26th September, where we'll be having policymakers, where we're going to have the academics, scholars, intellectuals, going to have research institutions, government departments to come and share ideas. And we're hoping from this particular conference that we are going to deliver a policy brief, and then also some of the papers that are going to be presented should also form part of the policy brief that will be submitted to government. But there are also various activities within the conference that take place. We'll be having Dr. Naledi Pandor will also deliver a lecture, President Mashatile, former President Kgalema Motlanthe will also form part of the conference just to deliberate and interact with the scholars in Africa at large and globally on issues of public affairs. So the conference will start from the 21st and end on the 26th September with various topical themes, including G20, local government, issues of sustainability, climate change, and many other important aspects that refers to public affairs. So we are anticipating close to 800 delegates to come to Thohoyandou just to reflect on these topical issues and see how we can pave a future for our government. There have been many talks for this particular conference. We just don't want it to be that expensive talk, but we also want to have a tangible outcome as a policy brief, as a document that will find expression in the policies of the government.
An interesting theme there, building state capacity, prospects and challenges. What are some of the urgent governance challenges do you think that are on the table that are really relevant right now that will be explored?
Well, besides the issues of transparency and accountability, corruption, and many issues, including the professionalization of the public sector. So these are the issues that we are going to look into, the issues of skill deficit that are there and how best we can do as public affairs to ensure that the skills that we have can complement the skills that are needed in government in order to pursue the professionalization of the public sector agenda. So those are the central issues that will be deliberated at the conference.
So the conference is being held in collaboration with partners like the University of Beda, the Department of Public Service, Administration, National School of Governments and others. How do these partnerships enhance the outcomes of the conference in your view?
Well, there's been a cry that academics speak alone. So the partnership with this important institution, it's an interface between academics and those who are in practice, just to come and share experiences and also come with a policy direction that could have encompassed both academics and also the living experiences of the practitioners. Because of academics has been theorizing this issue. Now we have partners who deal with this thing on a day-to-day basis. So therefore, if we bring them together, it becomes a praxis where I believe we're going to have tangible results.
And South Africa holding the G20 presidency, significant this year. How does this global responsibility, in your view, influence the kind of conversations that are going to be held on governance and state capacity this year, as opposed to other years where the G20 isn't a factor, really?
Well, we're hoping from the discussion that will be held later this year, obviously culmination from many activities, and SAPAM has been also part of various activities. So what is central to us is that the G20 should derive and seek to address some of the challenges that we have in the country, the question of financial stability and some of the resources that are needed in the country. I think through the G20, we are able to also have an expression on how they can assist in ensuring that the professionalization of the public sector is being embedded through their lived experiences in their particular countries. Maybe it should be a lesson learned. But what is central to us is that the G20 should also, when it ends in South Africa, we should be able to see that the ordinary lives of South Africa has changed. Maybe this could be through the investment that we could see in South Africa. Not only the debates, because we can debate and talk and nothing happens. So we want to see tangible results in South Africa, maybe addressing such issues of inequality, financial stability and resources that South Africa really needs to advance and tackle some of the pending issues such as unemployment and so on.
So I know that one of SAPAM's goals is to influence policy and governance reform. What practical policy reform recommendations are you hoping will emerge from this year's discussions?
Well, for us, we have galvanized support and advocated for the professionalization of the public sector, which is now found the expression in the cabinet. This is policy of government. So I think this is what was the advocacy that SAPAM has done. But we're also hoping from this conference we can see how the implementation of this professionalization, how far it goes to. So these are the issues that we want to see. But not only these issues of professionalization. We are hoping other issues that will be discussed will also find expression, because of where various experts and academics from different fields will be able to deal with governmental day-to-day issues. And we're hoping that from there, the discussions that will arise from there will find expression on the policy brief that will be submitting to government to see what the practitioners and also academics are saying and what they propose to happen in the country.
So ever since I became a journalist, ahead of conferences, I always ask the same question. And I always get the same answer that we don't want this to be just a talk shop. So what are you going to do to translate what is discussed and what is offered as perhaps solutions into real action that's doable and implementable and actually gets done?
Look, for us, we have these important departments, particularly DPSA, which is a policy department where it give directive to the various government departments. Look, in terms of the professionalization, the one that we have galvanized or advocated at SAPAM, it has found expression in the government. This is through the culmination of our conference, the annual conference that we have. But also, we have seen some of the implementation taking place in terms of the directives from the DPSA, informing people, various government departments, what needs to happen in their department. But not only that, Rapita, we are also going to find expression in terms of the curriculum, because of they've been saying that students that we feed them are not necessarily fit for purpose in the industry. So with such kind of conference, we are then able to address the curriculum that will address some of the challenges in the conference and also in the industry. So I'm thinking the conference where it is with our partners, we are ready to at least bring tangible results. And I'm sure after this conference, Barapita, I'll definitely come to you and tell you this is what we have agreed and this is what we're going to do. And we're going to put timelines to demonstrate to you that this is indeed what we want to achieve.
All right, so we're running out of time, but very briefly, how do young people get involved in something like this? Because a lot of the times we discuss big issues, and yet it's the young people that are most affected. Do they have a voice at platforms such as this, and are their issues ventilated?
Peter, I want you to come to SAPAM conference. You'll see young people confronting the leaders of various government departments to tell them how they feel, how they want to see their country happening. So SAPAM conference is precisely young people who are there to participate. But those who want to participate and join in SAPAM, you're more than welcome. Our website is www.sapam.co.za, and alternatively, you can even directly contact me on 076-750-2300. 076-750-2300. We are still waiting for people to come to Toyando to find expression and discuss and come with tangible results that will inform policy briefs in our government.
Prof, we wish you the very best, and any positive outcomes I know that might come out of there will certainly affect us all as citizens. So we wish you the very best with this conference. Thanks so much indeed for your time.
Thank you. See you in Toyando.
Thank you. That's Professor John Molepo, Executive Director of the South African Association of Public Administration and Management, SAPAM, on the very important upcoming conference. 7 o'clock Central African time. A very good morning to you. My name is Peter Ndoro. You're listening to Rise and Shine, broadcasting live from our studios in Johannesburg in South Africa. Asanda is away today, and we've got so much still to come on the program. I'll tell you a little bit more about those a little bit later on, because right now it's time for the news, as we say good morning to Tualane Tulongwethe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. The Congolese government says new accounts of atrocities in the east of the country show M23 rebels have not respected the commitments they made in a ceasefire deal last month. The DRC's Foreign Minister Therese Kaikwamba Wagner told the BBC her government was appalled but not surprised by reports suggesting that the rebels had killed scores of ethnic Hutu civilians. She accused Rwanda of training the M23 rebels, although the country has again denied backing them.
We are not surprised because this is not an isolated incident. The occupation of Eastern DRC by the M23 with the support of the RDF has been documented over years by the United Nations and other entities, and this occupation has throughout been characterized by atrocities targeting civilians.
South Africa's Justice Minister Mamoloko Kubai has urged full compliance with the recently gazetted regulations of the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into efforts to block the investigation and prosecution of Truth and Reconciliation Commission cases. Speaking at the Women's Month dialogue at the University of South Africa in Pretoria, Kubai emphasized the importance of reading and understanding the regulations. She says the regulations empower the Commission's chairperson, adding that compliance is not optional.
The gazettes are out in terms of, and I want to emphasize to South Africans, please read the regulations, because we don't want tomorrow you tell us that no, this is not within. The regulations empowers the chairperson in a number of areas. So I want to urge compliance with the commission is in terms of the act now. It's not if I want to. Anyone who's subpoenaed by the commission has to appear before the commission.
Furthermore, UN Women Deputy Representative Dr. Hazel Gooding says women's health, including mental well-being, is not a luxury but a necessity. She was speaking at the Women's Month dialogue in South Africa's capital, Pretoria, highlighting it as one of the 12 critical areas of the Beijing Declaration. Gooding stressed that proper nutrition, sexual and reproductive rights, freedom from violence and mental health are essential for women to realize their full potential.
Women's health is one of the 12 critical areas of the Beijing Declaration because women need to be healthy to realize our full potential. This includes proper nutrition, sexual and reproductive rights, freedom from violence, and mental health. Women's mental health and well-being are not luxuries. They are the foundation of activism, leadership, and care work.
Officials in Nigeria say the death toll in the attack by gunmen on a mosque and nearby homes in Katsina State has risen to at least 50, with around 60 others abducted. The attack occurred on Tuesday in the remote community of Unguwan Mantau as Muslim worshippers gathered for the dawn prayer. Witnesses say armed assailants arrived on motorcycles, opening fire inside the mosque before moving through the village. Several homes were also set ablaze before security forces arrived at the scene. And finally, the United States has announced additional sanctions on new officials of the International Criminal Court, with the State Department designating 2 judges and 2 prosecutors attached to the Hague-based court. The move follows similar actions targeting 4 ICC judges by the United States in June in response to what Washington views as ongoing threats to American and Israelis from the court. Sharon Bryce Pease reports that the officials have also been targeted for authorizing investigations into U.S. personnel in Afghanistan.
The ICC slammed the action when officials were first targeted in June, describing it as an attempt to undermine the independence of the judicial institution. The U.S. moves follow the issuance of arrest warrants for Israeli and Hamas officials by the court, among them Israel's sitting Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on war crimes charges, including using starvation as a weapon of war in Gaza. In the latest action, Washington sanctioned sitting judges Kimberly Prost of Canada and French jurist Nicolas Guillot, prosecutors Nazahat Khan of Fiji and Mame Mandiaye Nyang of Senegal.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Cholani Tulo Wepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Kenya Federation appeals to, in a sports headline, Football Kenya Federation appeals to CAF to allow 60% fans in Moi International Sports Centre. And Cricket South Africa and KFC renew partnership mini to mighty campaign this Women's Month. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Senior legal counsels representing some local and international banks accused of colluding to manipulate the rand says that the South African Competition Commission has failed to make solid case regarding their participation in what's been described as collusive behavior. The financial institutions argued that the alleged overarching conspiracy to manipulate the rand-dollar exchange rate must demonstrate that they had prior knowledge of the plan and expressed intent to participate. Well, the South African Competition Commission is making an appeal to the country's constitutional court to overturn previous judgments that excluded foreign banks from the rand rigging case. Economics reporter Naledi Ngobo filed this report.
Around 17 foreign banks implicated in the rand rigging case have maintained that the Competition Commission has failed to show that there is a case for personal jurisdiction or adequate connecting factors between foreign banks and local banks to justify collusion. Senior counsel Paul Farlam, representing the Bank of America in the case, has argued that foreign banks shouldn't be implicated in rand rigging for merely being members of the instant Bloomberg chat room where traders allegedly conspired to participate in misconduct.
The argument is because we were in the old kids chat room, therefore we knew or could reasonably regard it as knowing that there was a worldwide SOC involving South African traders, and so we submitted that if the old kids chat room has good and bad, malign and benign purposes, and it's involved in they're trading a number of different currencies, you can't initially then conclude that because you joined the old kids chat room, you automatically had a malign intent.
Nedbank's legal representative, senior counsel Anthony Gordz, stressed that the bank is merely implicated to a Reuters trading platform that is noted as sharing similarities with the Bloomberg chat room in question. Gordz emphasized that the quotes posted by Nedbank on the Reuters public platform were much too sporadic to constitute collusive behavior.
So what we see is that the case against Nedbank is based on sporadic allegations of cryptic market conduct that the Commission has effectively thumbsucked from a set of trading data. The Commission does not put Nedbank in any of the chat rooms. The Commission does not allege that there was any contact, communication, understanding, agreement, consultation, sharing of information between Nedbank and any of the other respondents.
Australian New Zealand Bank Group ANZ claims that the traders implicated in collusive behavior were not employed by the bank at the time of the alleged misconduct. Senior counsel Chris Loxon elaborates.
Tax is said to be employed from 2013 onwards. Tesla until 2012. Now, the problem that they have with CATS is that the last identified chat in which CATS is involved is October 2012, before he gets employed by ANZ.
The Competition Commission argues that the Competition Act allows local authorities to act against anyone whose conduct impacts the South African economy, regardless of jurisdiction. Makgale Mohlala is the head of cartel at the Competition Commission.
We made it very clear that other jurisdictions, the Americans have prosecuted traders for manipulating the dollar. The British have done the same for manipulating the pound, so as the Europeans for the euro, and lately the Australian for the Australian dollar. So the South African rand, no one has prosecuted anybody for the manipulation of the South African rand, and the South African Competition Commission and Tribunal are the only authority vested with responsibility of prosecuting such kind of conduct.
The currency manipulation case will enter its third day of proceedings from 10 a.m. on Thursday at the Constitutional Court. I'm Naledi Ngobo in Johannesburg.
The KwaZulu-Natal Convention Bureau, in collaboration with Milvest Advisory and the city of Umhlathuze, bring you the 2025 Tourism Investment Forum Africa. As a global platform for local action, the Tourism Investment Africa aims to promote the secondary and tertiary cities and regions as attractive investment and tourism hubs. Be part of the movement transforming tourism in Africa. Join us for the TIFA 2025 from August 27 to 29 at Tembela Venue, Richards Bay, KZN, South Africa.
Stella Longwe, Pamalonje.
Palitu soko mapano pamalonje. Kumvera nyimbo za mu Africa, kusangalala, kupeza moyo. Akuti kumva moyo kuti kuyenda bwino. Pano pamalonje. Ndiyetu apa tindikatswiri oyimba ameneyu ndikatswiri wa dziko la Malawi amene akukhala mdziko la South Africa ndipo amayimba amene akuti ndi Big Nick Malawi. Yatusani kuti kodi moyo wanu woyimba ukuyenda bwanji mu Johannesburg?
Moyo woyimba ukuyenda bwinobwino kwambiri. Chilichonse chikutheka ndithu bwinobwino.
Ayi aziwoneka chilichonse chikutheka mofa magrasi anu apa mwaka. Akuti kumenya yonse aziwoneka zoti azikutheka ndithu mu Johannesburg.
Malonje, panthawi ya 6 koloko kufikira 7 koloko madzulo. Lowiruka ndi Stella Longwe.
From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam, rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
Now, let's go to West Africa. At least 50 people have been killed and around 60 others abducted in a brutal attack on a mosque and nearby homes in Katsina State, northwest of Nigeria. The assault took place on Tuesday in the remote community of Ungwan Mantau, as worshippers gathered there for the dawn prayer. Gunmen on motorcycles opened fire inside the mosque before moving through the village, setting homes ablaze and abducting women and girls. Well, joining us now from Nigeria is Channel Africa correspondent Jonathan James Liamgon with more on this developing story. Jonathan, thanks so much indeed for joining us. Welcome. What can you tell us a little bit more about this tragic incident?
Good morning, Peter. And a very sad incident indeed. From what we know so far, this incident, its information coming out of it has been a bit sketchy, given how remote and far removed that community is from mainstream media coverage. But so far, what we do know from statements that have come from the Katsina State government and from some political office holders or elected officials from that area, we've been able to put together some details. So far, we hear that 32 people have been confirmed to have died as a result of the attacks. And speaking yesterday, a representative at the House of Representatives representing that general area, Honorable Soda Soli, said that from the information available to him, he can authoritatively say that this attack was some sort of reprisal following an earlier failed attack by the bandits who had stormed the general area last weekend. And the people, because the people have their own level of arrangement for security, and then the state government has another level of its own security arrangement. Then you have the police and the military. So following an earlier attempt by the bandits during, I think, some wedding, they were resisted and some of their men were even killed. So they returned Tuesday morning and they attacked this community. Now, that is his own account. From another account that I was able to monitor from an eyewitness, there were similarities, but the eyewitness's account, this attack happened following the fact that the bandits had gone to attack another community and they were resisted. And while they were escaping, they opened fire. They stopped by this mosque and opened fire on the people, and then left subsequently. Whatever the case is, the truth is that Katsina State has come under continuous attacks. This has been happening over the years. Incidentally, the immediate past president of Nigeria, who ran the government for 8 years, is or was from that state. He passed away last month. That is Muhammadu Buhari. But Katsina State has got its own peculiarity of bordering a couple of also very troubled states in the country. Zamfara State, which has seen perhaps the highest cases of banditry owing to illegal mining and field security operations in those areas. Zamfara State borders Katsina State, and particularly this area where the attacks took place, the area isn't far from Zamfara State. Katsina State also has the peculiarity of sharing an international border with Niger Republic. And as such, you also have an influx, an unregulated influx of armed bandits and ammunitions that come from across the border. So all of this have joined to make the security management situation in Katsina State very complex. And it is one of those states that continues to suffer. In fact, the House of Representatives member who spoke yesterday to the media say that so far they are dealing with this insecurity because of the peculiar location of Katsina State, and that is the number one reason behind the attacks. Peter?
Security authorities, their response times. What do we know about how quickly they can get to scenes like this, or are they always there long after events have taken place and they're just not resourced enough to be there in a preventative capacity?
Your latter statement couldn't be further from the reality on ground, Peter. In fact, following these attacks on Tuesday at early morning, it's maybe about an hour past this time as we speak, the community dwellers who survived the attack actually came out in protest and barricaded the highway that passes through the town. And their major grievance was protesting about the fact that government needs to do something about the insecurity situation, because as at that time, no security presence had even gotten to that community. On its own hand, in a statement that the police did release, they claimed that the bandits, it was when they were resisted by the police in an earlier community, and while in retreat, they stopped at this place and opened fire on the community. But one thing for sure, Peter, that we have seen as a trend with many of these attacks is a revelation of the poor capacity of the Nigerian police and military in terms of numbers to be able to cope with the vast territory that Nigeria is, especially given the vast territory that continues to suffer insecurity. It has once again opened up the conversation that has been going on in Nigeria for a few years now as regards reforms that should include the setting up of community policing. Because a couple of states, just like Katsina State, they have managed to introduce other forms of added security vigilance by setting up vigilante organizations and organizing local volunteer vigilantes in groups. But this hasn't been able to stem the tide of insecurity, given the fact that there's a limitation to the kind of arms that those groups can carry. So you are spot on when you talk about the response time being very slow. However, on this occasion, an account on the part of government is that there was a response by the Nigeria Air Force following when they received report about the attack. And because they mobilized, they scrambled some planes that quickly went around in those general communities in an air operation that caused confusion. amongst the bandits and made them to beat a retreat. And a lot of people managed to escape, and they're still getting people returning back to the communities. Peter?
Jonathan, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much indeed for that comprehensive update. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Do have a nice day.
Thank you. That's Jonathan James Lamgon, who's Channel Africa correspondent there, giving us an update on this unfortunate and very sad and tragic events that have taken place there with bandits killing people in mosques and burning people's homes in the aftermath. It's suspected to be some kind of revenge killing, but we'll keep on top of that story for you.
Channel Africa and you have got something in common. The thirst for knowledge.
Right, let's move to the Democratic Republic of Congo now. And this is where Human Rights Watch has documented one of the deadliest atrocities committed by M23 rebels since their resurgence in 2021. More than 140 civilians, we believe, have been killed last month in attacks around Virunga National Park. Violence that, according to Human Rights Watch, points to a systematic campaign of terror against local communities, allegedly with external backing. Well, to help us unpack this a little bit more and understand the scale of these atrocities and their impact on civilians, we're now joined by Clementine de Montjoy, who's a senior Great Lakes researcher at Human Rights Watch. Thanks so much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
So, Human Rights Watch has reported a wave of killings near Virunga that left, we believe, over 140 people dead. Take us through what your team has been able to uncover about how these massacres unfolded.
Yeah, absolutely. We released a report yesterday documenting mass killings by the M23 with the support of the Rwandan army in an area that's bordering the Virunga National Park. It's a very fertile area where farmers normally come during the ploughing season. Some set up huts and live in their fields with their families. What we found was that between July 10th and 30th, M23 carried out executions of at least 140 civilians, primarily ethnic Hutu, including women and children. The UN has reported that the death toll is over 300, and sources on the ground have told us that that's a credible and likely death toll. We were able to confirm 140 cases. What we found was that M23 blocked off the area, access to the area, and went into the field and carried out executions of including entire families. So we spoke with people who managed to hide and saw the M23 kill their entire families, including babies as young as 9 months old, right in front of their eyes. We spoke with a woman who also said that a group of around 70 people, including women and girls, were rounded up and taken to a nearby river where they were lined up against the river and shot dead, and their bodies falling into the water, flowing away. People told us that M23 prevented them from taking the bodies of their loved ones out to organize funerals. Some were buried on the spot, some were left where they fell out in the fields, which indicates a desire to prevent people from identifying the full number of dead. And this really, in our opinion, highlights the need for an independent investigation to take place. The UN earlier this year established a commission of inquiry, which it has yet to operationalize. It should be urgently operationalized, and Rwanda and M23 should give access to independent experts to be able to carry out an investigation and determine the full scale and scope of the abuse.
It must be difficult to collect and verify all of these testimonies, especially with such a volatile and dangerous environment. How are you able to gather all this information?
It is, and people are afraid of speaking. They're afraid of retaliation. Some have fled to neighboring towns. Some have even fled into Uganda out of fear. But we were able to speak with over 24 witnesses and survivors who shared detailed information with us about the killings, those responsible, the chain of command on the ground. And we also corroborated accounts using satellite imagery, maps. We reviewed photographs, videos that were sent to us and had them analyzed by forensic pathologists who confirmed that the injuries were consistent with those of mass executions. People's hands were tied behind their backs. They displayed machete wounds or gunshot wounds, for example. We also spoke with medical sources who confirmed that many injured were being taken to medical facilities in the area with machete wounds, gunshot wounds. So we tried to use as many different sources as possible to corroborate the information that we received directly from eyewitnesses and survivors.
How have Congolese authorities and maybe even regional actors responded to your findings? I'm wondering if there's a political will to act on this evidence.
Well, the area is under the control of the M23, and the Congolese state isn't able to exert authority over those areas under M23 control. However, Rwanda, which backs the M23 armed group and has effective control over the M23, is ultimately the state that can be held, or its commanders can be held criminally liable for the actions of M23. In this situation, if they had known about the abuse and failed to prevent it or failed to punish it. And we received first-hand accounts from residents of the area who told us they saw Rwandan soldiers on the ground alongside M23, and this was confirmed by UN and military sources. But beyond that presence, because of Rwanda's control over M23, it can be considered an occupying force, and therefore its military commanders can be held accountable for the abuses that are committed in areas under M23 control.
This isn't sadly the first mass killings attributed to the M23. Do we know why this cycle of violence keeps repeating despite ceasefire agreements and peace talks?
Well, one of the key issues that's of concern to us is the lack of discussion on justice and accountability throughout these peace talks and negotiations. And one of the commanders who was responsible for these operations was implicated in war crimes over a decade ago during the last iteration of the M23 conflict. And my colleagues back then documented his responsibility in possible war crimes, and he was put under UN sanctions. So it shows the importance of addressing impunity when attempting to broker peace discussions. In addition, there really needs to be some kind of mechanism in place, and the peace agreement the US has brokered puts in place an oversight mechanism and a security coordination mechanism, but that need to be able to respond to these types of violations. The parties committed to protecting civilians as part of the US peace deal, and there needs to be some kind of mechanism that will trigger investigations when these types of large-scale abuses happen, and make sure that there are no war crimes that are committed in the context of operations that have been agreed upon in the peace agreement. In this case, we're talking about anti-FDLR operations.
Right. Clementine, we're going to have to leave it there, sadly, but thank you so much indeed for giving us some insights in these tragic events. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
That was Clementine de Montjoy, Senior Great Lakes Researcher at Human Rights Watch, speaking about recent atrocities committed by M23 rebels in eastern DRC and urgent action needed to protect civilians in the region. And that's come out in one of Human Rights Watch's recent reports. It's 7:30. It's time for your news headlines. Here's Jwalana Tulongwepe.
SABC News. Headlines. African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Making headlines, the Congolese government says new accounts of atrocities in the east of the country show that M23 rebels have not respected the commitments they made in a ceasefire deal last month. Officials in Nigeria say the death toll in the attack by gunmen on a mosque and nearby homes in Katsina State has risen to at least 50, with around 60 others abducted. And finally, the United States has announced additional sanctions on new officials of the International Criminal Court, with the State Department designating 2 judges and 2 prosecutors attached to the Hague-based court. I will have details on these and other stories at 8 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's take a look once again at what's been happening in the world of sport. So good morning, Figile Lingwat.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good morning once again, Peter. We begin with football news. The Football Kenya Federation, FKF, has formally appealed to Confederation of African Football, CAF, to lift the sanction which slashed fans allowed at the Moi International Sports Centre, Kasarani, to 60%. Sports Cabinet Secretary Salim Vuria revealed the new development on the 20th of August after overseeing final preparations undertaken by the local organizing committee for Friday's quarter-final clash between Kenya and Madagascar. The CS exuded confidence in the preparations undertaken by LOC as it confirmed there was a chance fans would be able to attend the game scheduled for Friday in full capacity. Part of the reason the CS was confident CAF would review the sanction is because there were no incidents during Harambee Stars' last group game against Zambia. Harambee Stars, who topped Group A, played all their group matches at the Moi International Sports Centre, Kasarani. For the opening group games, CAF allowed the stadium to be filled to its 44,000 capacity, but a series of incidents forced the federation to cap the tickets to just 27,000 for the final group game against Zambia. On to cricket news, the KFC extends their sponsorship to include the Proteas women's team and the team's preparations ahead of the World Cup in India in September. KFC has had a long-standing relationship with Cricket South Africa through their mini cricket program. It will now also be the title sponsors of South Africa's national women's team. It's exciting news for the Proteas as they add the final touches to their preparations ahead of the Women's World Cup in India and Sri Lanka starting next month. More than 120 mini cricketers have gone on to play for Proteas teams over the last 16 years, and CSA was no doubt delighted to renew their partnership in a multi-year deal that now also includes the Proteas women's team. Proteas wicketkeeper Sinalo Chafta agrees that the program has been invaluable in introducing cricket to children from all walks of life.
KFC has always been within cricket, and I think the growth that you've seen coming in from grassroots level, I think it's very important that they've actually been the feeding force, because you start with mini cricket before you go to hardball cricket. So I think when they actually coming in as an official partner just cements the intention with the grassroots level.
And on to basketball news now. Nigeria's run in the 2025 AfroBasket ended on Wednesday in Luanda when they lost to Senegal 91-75. Nigeria became the second team to reach the quarterfinals undefeated after Cote d'Ivoire to see their AfroBasket title aspirations come to an abrupt end. Branco Badio put on a show leading Senegal in scoring with 32 points. An exhilarating opening quarter saw Senegal and Nigeria tirelessly trading blows, but Nigeria led 24-23 after 7 lead changes. Jean-Jacques Boisy hit a three-pointer on Senegal's first possession of the second quarter to give them a 26-24 lead. Another three-pointer from Amar Sila extended Senegal's lead to 29-24, and Nigeria never led again. With this victory, Senegal returns to the AfroBasket semi-finals for the 5th time since the 2013 edition of the tournament in Abidjan. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fikile Lungwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Parlez-vous couramment le français? Êtes-vous passionné par la radio? Et êtes-vous qualifié pour travailler en Afrique du Sud? Envoyez-nous votre CV et vos 3 minutes démo en MP3 à @channelafrica.co.za pour avoir une chance de rejoindre la famille Channel Africa. Si vous n'avez pas de réponse après 14 jours, cela signifie que vous n'avez pas été retenu. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Channel Africa and you have got something in common. The thirst for knowledge.
Right, let's get some knowledge on the business and economics front with the Business News Update. Nosipo Zuma.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. In your business news this hour, the Federation Unions of South Africa, FEDUSA, has welcomed the Department of Employment and Labour's move to reinstate powers of labour inspectors to enforce pension fund payments. FEDUSA says this tackles the widespread theft of workers' retirement savings by dishonest employers in industries like cleaning, security and local government, where unpaid contributions have ballooned into billions, leaving many workers in poverty. FEDUSA General Secretary is Rifta Acham.
In the past, when workers have gone to access the very elements to determine what the levels of contributions have been, they have found with absolute horror that those pensions have not been paid over to the funds, albeit the fact that they have been deducted from their salaries. So this new enforcement mechanism certainly allows them to access, to see what is available, and making sure that we can hold hands with all the relevant authorities to make sure that those defaults are no longer as extensive as what they are.
South Africa's Tourism Minister Patricia de Lille says she will tentatively appoint one or more people to manage the affairs of South African Tourism Board until a new board is appointed. This follows her dissolution of the board yesterday. De Lille has cited its failure to address the legality of the procedure it followed to convene a special board meeting earlier this month. This is because only a board chairperson is empowered to convene such a meeting. De Lille says that the board's decision to put the CEO Nombulelo Guliwe on precautionary suspension was also unlawful. South Africa's Water and Sanitation Minister Phemima Jordina is in Lesotho to conduct oversight visits to a number of projects, including the Podihadi Dam, the Sinku Bridge and the Lesotho Highlands Water Tunnel. She says South Africa has invested billions in these projects. The Lesotho Highlands Water Project is a bi-nation initiative between the two countries designed to transfer water from Lesotho's highlands to South Africa's Gauteng province. It involves the construction of dams, tunnels and hydroelectric power stations. Majordina says South Africa is also paying for the water it gets from Lesotho.
We have invested 53 billion for this project, and this project was delayed for 9 years. The cost since then escalated to 53 billion. But also, we are not taking this water for free. We are paying royalties. We are paying hundreds of millions per month for this water. So I want to dismiss the myth that we are just taking Lesotho people for granted. That is not true. We are paying.
Kenya is in talks with China to convert a dollar-denominated railway loan into Chinese yuan. China is Kenya's biggest bilateral lender, and the country took on the debt to construct a $5 billion high-speed railway, which is one of the country's largest ever infrastructure projects. The standard gauge railway line was launched in May 2017 during the administration of Kenya's fourth president, Uhuru Kenyatta. And finally, oil prices have gained slightly as larger than expected declines in crude oil and fuel inventories in the U.S. Brent crude futures were up 13 U.S. cents to $66.97 a barrel after gaining 1.6% in the previous session. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures rose 15 cents to $62.86 after climbing 1.4% on Wednesday. Your financial indicators: one US dollar in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 534. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 39. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 325. And in Zambia, it's 23 kwacha 29. The BRICS countries: $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 48. Russia is 80 rubles 48. India, it's 87 rupees or 4. In China, it's 7 yuan 18. And in South Africa, $1 is trading at 17 rand 68. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,336 and platinum at $1,335 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $67.12 a barrel. Now, for any business news stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I'm Nosipo Zoma.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802.
The KwaZulu-Natal Convention Bureau, in collaboration with Milvest Advisory and the city of Mhlathuze, bring you the 2025 Tourism Investment Forum Africa. As a global platform for local action, the Tourism Investment Forum Africa aims to promote secondary and tertiary cities and regions as attractive investment and tourism hubs. Be part of the movement transforming tourism investment in Africa. Join us for the TIFA 2025 from the 27th to the 29th of August at Tembela Venue, Richards Bay in KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa.
Bringing you the energy, news, and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba has reaffirmed the world's fourth largest economy is eager to work with Africa. He addressed the 9th Tokyo International Conference on African Development in Yokohama. The gathering is held under the theme Co-creating Innovative Solutions with Africa. Now, South Africa is represented by President Cyril Ramaphosa, who's using the occasion to advance Pretoria's presidency of the G20 and pursue more bilateral economic engagements with Tokyo. Ditaba Tsotetsi has more.
The 9th TIGET Summit takes place at a time of unprecedented threats to global peace and security, ongoing conflicts in some regions of the world and disruption to global trade. Africa is counting on its friendship with Japan to weather the storm. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says that the African continent has a potential of contributing to the development of other regions.
It's at a time of interconnected crises and deep inequalities. Tackling these crises requires a clear focus not only on development for Africa, but on development with Africa. And I salute Japan for making this the focus of its cooperation with the continent.
The conference, first held in 1993, focuses on Japanese support for development in Africa. AU Chairperson Mahmoud Ali Youssef.
I urge all stakeholders, governments and development partners, the private sector and the civil society to renew the commitment to innovation-driven collaboration. Together, we can co-create solutions that are not only transformative, but also sustainable and inclusive, ensuring that no one is left behind.
For South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa, it's been a busy period with a number of business leaders who are attending the conference. Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba says Africa remains a key partner.
He says, just as we once did in Asia, we the people of Japan wish to laugh, cry, and break a sweat alongside the people of Africa.
Is one of the major focal points in Yokohama. Dr. Lwazi Manzi of Global Leaders Network says world leaders must commit to ensure the well-being of their citizens.
In the current context of competing priorities and withdrawals of official development assistance, this intervention reaffirms the commitment of African leaders, the private sector, and key health agencies to advancing the sustainable development goals related to women's, children's, and adolescents' health, whilst issuing a call for bolder action and sustained political commitment.
The summit is held as Japan, which is one of the key economies in Asia, seeks to solidify ties with Africa, especially at a time when China has made inroads on the continent. Amdi Tabatsoteti, SABC News.
South Africa's Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Mamoloko Kubai, has called for urgent and consistent efforts to dismantle systemic gender bias, particularly within African institutions and emerging technologies like artificial intelligence. Speaking in an exclusive interview with Channel Africa on the sidelines of a Women's Month dialogue at the University of South Africa in Pretoria, Kubai stressed that education remains a critical tool in breaking the barriers that women are facing. Channel Africa reporter Michael Mbewe spoke with the Justice Minister.
This gathering is a reminder for us to support each other as women, but to look at the issues consistently. And that's why we talked about artificial intelligence and what we see today as artificial intelligence, that tomorrow, in terms of the biasness of today's environment and work environment and our communities, it takes the same shape, and therefore means that consistently women will be affected and will be at the disadvantage.
You spoke fondly about the patriarchal systems that we are witnessing within different organizations in Africa. To break the barrier, what would it take? Because we have seen a lot of meetings and conferences
discussing the plight of women.
It seems like we are still not moving the needle.
That's why being at UNISA is so significant, because this is an institution of higher learning where we can utilize to break the barriers in terms of education. Focus having a woman who is sensitive about gender mainstreaming and ensuring that within the communities we are able to have young people who come here, young women who come into this organization, find support and find mechanisms to be able to make it. Because with education we will be able to break the barrier. We have to ensure that the young girls that go into school actually get involved in the areas that are important, the future of work tomorrow, to be able to drive economic development. And this remains quite important. They are not just about talking, but every time you come together, you flag these issues, they create an opportunity. And that's why I said to Prof, in terms of the work that they do around artificial intelligence, can they ensure that it does not continue and perpetuate the biasness of our gender in terms of women being disadvantaged?
On a different issue, Minister, your diet is very full. You're dealing with a lot of complex issues. So one being you are involved with the repatriation and the burial of former freedom fighters. How far is that in terms of those who lost their lives in the foreign land?
Yeah, firstly, we're concluding the Gallows project this year, which is a milestone that we can be able to reflect upon as part of healing the nation. The last one we'll do in Eastern Cape, but also the team was actually out of the country, going to identify together with the family. It's a very, very painful process. They take the families with them to be able to identify the graves, and then they work in that process to exhume, we get the permits, and working together. That project is led by the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, and together with us, we've got the task team in the NPA, that is Missing Persons Task Team, that goes and also leads in terms of identifying, verifying, doing the DNA. It's a process that sometimes can take even 6 months just to be able to bring back the remains, as we say. So there's still work to be done, quite a lot. I think we have, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong with the figure, more than 500 that we still have to bring back into the country.
Two more issues that have just now been ventilated within the public space. Yesterday we saw the announcement of the beginning of the work of the Commission of Inquiry into allegations of the TRC persecutions and so on. We saw Justice Kampepe announcing several measures that are going to undertake. But also we have seen also that the Madanga inquiry, just seen a notification within the communication lines that they will begin on the 1st of September. Your comments on all of these two issues?
We, as the department, as you would have seen in the statements, we are responsible to ensuring that the commissions are up and running. It's unfortunate that it took a bit longer than we anticipated. The commissions wanted to start 1st of August. It was unfortunate we couldn't because procurement processes had needed to be done. But the venues have been secured. The Kampepe Commission actually will be in Saibono. The Matlanga Commission will be at the Justice College here. One will be in Johannesburg, one will be in Pretoria. And I'm sorry to the journalists because they're going to have to run through the two venues, but we needed to utilize government-owned buildings so that we can cap the costs. So the Justice College is our college as the Department of Justice. That's where we train. Saibono is owned by the Department of Gauteng, as Gauteng government. So that helped us in terms of reduction of the cost. The personnel is being finalized. All of them, as you saw, the spokesperson of the commissions are already there, and work has begun. What we were left with is just in terms of the ICT infrastructure, which I will be getting a report. Actually, I received a report last night from the team, but there were still outstanding issues that I needed to deal with today. So we'll be able to. The gazettes are out in terms of, and I want to emphasize to South Africans, please read the regulations, because we don't want tomorrow you tell us that no, this is not within. The regulations empowers the chairperson in a number of areas. So I want to urge compliance with the commission is in terms of the act now. It's not if I want to. Anyone who's subpoenaed by the commission has to appear before the commission. It's within the regulations, and that's why I'm saying both the commission's regulations are out, have been gazetted, are being distributed, and I want to urge South Africans to read them. But most importantly, I want to urge South Africans to give us the support, or to give the commission the support it needs so that they can be able to find the answers that we are looking for. And I do believe many South Africans actually are looking forward to getting those answers.
That was South Africa's Justice and Constitutional Development Minister Mamoloko Kubai speaking with Channel Africa's reporter Michael Mbewe.
Channel Africa and you have got something in common. The thirst for knowledge.
And still in South Africa, August is Women's Month in South Africa, and it's a time to reflect on the power, resilience and innovation of women who continue to shape the country's future. In the Limpopo province, a woman-led enterprise is not only reviving indigenous knowledge, but also creating jobs, empowering families and preserving cultural heritage, and one cup of tea at a time. Our reporter Lebahang Mabange picks up the story.
In the rural villages of Limpopo province, surrounded by the mountains of Sekhukhune, women are harvesting more than just plants. They are harvesting history, culture and empowerment through Sejong Tea Crafters, a business founded on the strength and vision of women. The founder, Nondumiso Phahla, says her journey started while working as a primary health nurse.
I had a long journey of community development which was inspired in 2003 as a primary health nurse, as I was looking for solutions, especially looking at the flooding and the overwhelmed system of toll, based on exploring different ways of organic farming.
What began as a health intervention grew into a tea business. Phahla explains how people once looked down on indigenous teas until tests revealed their health benefits.
They always believed that these teas were for poor people. They always believed that they were drinking these teas because their parents could not purchase the tea that is fully packaged in the shops. I then stimulated them to say, let's take these samples and test them. The first entry was SIDA and SAPS, and from SAPS there was also a random check by Tuks University. Guess what? The blackbush tea, the Tipane tea, which grows as a parasite, was rich in vitamin A, C, E and zinc and it had properties to prevent debilitating conditions.
The company now produces two main teas, Dia and Depani, harvested on different villages. Maboke Pasha, the director for harvesting and quality assurance, explains.
All of our work is centered on indigenous tea. From the village of Matala, Ramoshibo comes Dia, while Khapala is home to Depani.
For Maboke, working at Sejong has been life-changing, both personally and for her family.
Your work here at Sejong has been life-changing. I've learned that work is not only about going to school, there are opportunities that come from people's ideas. When we work together and share our thoughts, we grow. My life has changed, and so have the lives of my children.
She adds that customer feedback has also confirmed the health benefits of their teas.
I realized the importance of this tea when people came back after buying it and shared how it improved their health and lives. Before the test, we only saw it as ordinary tea. We didn't know it carried such long-term benefits.
Sejong Tea Crafters is more than just a business. It is a story of women reclaiming heritage, creating livelihoods, and building a legacy for future generations. As South Africa marks Women's Month, the story of Sejong Tea Crafters is a reminder of the resilience and ingenuity of women who continue to find solutions, inspire change, and empower their communities. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebogang Mabanye in the Limpopo province of South Africa.
Mix Vibration sur Channel Africa.
C'est notre invitée du jour, la belle Aïna Mwenze. Elle est là. Certaines l'appellent Boss Lady.
Bonjour Monsieur Jolino.
Parlez-nous un tout petit peu de vous.
Je m'appelle Boss Lady Aïna. Je mets l'accent sur le nom de Boss Lady parce que je mérite cela après le travail fait. Et c'est une rémunération en titre de la personne que je suis devenue aujourd'hui. Épouse et une mère de 4 garçons. Et voilà ce que je peux dire pour l'instant.
Et vous vous êtes lancé dans le business. Comment c'est venu?
En tant que mère et se retrouvant dans les pays étrangers, particulièrement en Afrique du Sud, je me disais que laisser les enfants sur la charge des travailleurs ou d'une bonne, ça serait pas très intéressant. Je me suis dit, bon, je dois essayer de m'organiser et trouver un emploi que je peux faire.
Mix Vibration, tous les dimanches de 18h à 19h, temps universel.
A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
It's a little bit before the news, which gives us an opportunity to look back in history at significant moments across the continent. In 2019, we hoped that a new era would be beginning in Sudan after a long-term president, Bashir, had been removed by the people, literally. The Transitional Sovereignty Council was sworn in on this day in 2019, and Abdallah Hamdok took the oath as the country's prime minister on this day. I was very fortunate to have met him 2 months ago, actually. He was here in South Africa, and I'm hoping we can get him on the program soon, just to give us an update on what happened during that period of time and what he hopes Sudan will be able to navigate its way out of its current civil war, literally. Also on this day in 1982 in Eswatini, King Sobhuza II passed away. He was 83 at the time, and that ended the longest verified reign of any monarch in recorded history. It's 8 o'clock Central African time, which means it's time for the last hour of the program Rise and Shine. Broadcasting live on our platform on www.channelafrica.co.za. This, of course, is where we bring you the African perspective. Thank you so much indeed for joining us on this final hour. My name is Peter Ndoro. Asanda Beda is away today. And this hour, we'll be looking at quite a fascinating story that's been playing out in Uganda. A business activity across Kampala ground to a virtual standstill as traders have initiated a strike, shutting down shops, particularly around the main streets. But I'll tell you a bit more about that. The question is why, and why is this so important? Well, we're going to be finding out in the next half an hour. We'll be talking to a Ugandan lawyer and social activist, Goodwin Toko. So that's what's coming up in this next 30 minutes. First, let's catch you up with the day's news. Here's Dwalani Tulongwepe, and that'll be followed by sports headlines with Figile Lingwat.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. The DRC's Foreign Minister Therese Kayigwamba Wagner has accused Rwanda of training the M23 rebels. Kayigwamba Wagner's comments come as the Congolese government says new accounts of atrocities in the east of the country show M23 rebels have not respected the commitments they made in a ceasefire deal last month. Rwanda has again denied the accusation. Speaking to the BBC, Kayigwamba Wagner says her government was appalled but not surprised by reports suggesting that the rebels had killed scores of ethnic Hutu civilians.
We are not surprised because this is not an isolated incident. The occupation of eastern DRC by the M23 with the support of the RDF has been documented over years by the United Nations and other entities, and this occupation has throughout been characterized by atrocities targeting civilians.
South Africa's Justice Minister Mamoluko Kubai has urged full compliance with the recently gazetted regulations of the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into efforts to block the investigation and prosecution of Truth and Reconciliation Commission cases. Speaking at the Women's Month Dialogue at the University of South Africa in Pretoria, Kubai emphasized the importance of reading and understanding the regulations. She says the regulations empower the Commission's chairperson, adding that compliance is not optional.
The gazettes are out in terms of, and I want to emphasize to South Africans, please read the regulations, because we don't want tomorrow you tell us that, no, this is not within. The regulations empowers the chairperson in a number of areas. So I want to urge compliance with the commission is in terms of the act now. It's not if I want to. Anyone who's subpoenaed by the commission has to appear before the commission.
The Benchmarks Foundation in South Africa says that illegal mining is an economic problem which police cannot address. The SARS police intensify their Operation Valumgodi, which is aimed at eradicating illegal mining in the country. Critics say the operation is failing to address the underlying issue and identify the kingpins. The foundation's researcher, David van Wyk, says most of the illegal miners were retrenched without proper pension packages.
Tens of thousands of workers are being retrenched every year. Many of them are being retrenched without receiving their pensions. 42 billion rands are locked up in pension funds that have not reached mine workers. Apart from that, the moment a mine worker loses his job, they effectively become an illegal immigrant because the mining company shuts down. Very often the mine workers are not even informed that the mining company is shut down. They lose their work permits and so on, and they don't have money to go home because they've not received their pensions and unemployment benefits, and so they remain behind in informal settlements.
UN Woman Deputy Representative Dr. Hazel Gooding says women's health, including mental well-being, is not a luxury but a necessity. She was speaking at the Women's Month Dialogue in South Africa's capital, Pretoria, highlighting it as one of the 12 critical areas of the Beijing Declaration. Gooding stressed that proper nutrition, sexual and reproductive rights, freedom from violence and mental health are essential for women to realize their full potential.
Women's health is one of the 12 critical areas of the Beijing Declaration because women need to be healthy to realize our full potential. This includes proper nutrition, sexual and reproductive rights, freedom from violence, and mental health. Women's mental health and well-being are not luxuries. They are the foundation of activism, leadership, and care work.
Police in Brazil have accused the former President Jair Bolsonaro's son, Eduardo, of interfering in its investigation into an alleged coup plot. This relates to Eduardo Bolsonaro's lobbying efforts in the US in support of his father. The BBC's James Reid reports.
Eduardo Bolsonaro moved to the United States this year to rally support for his father, who's a political ally of Donald Trump. His efforts led Washington to impose 50% tariffs on Brazil and sanctions on a Supreme Court judge. Brazilian police say this amounts to criminal interference in the proceedings against his father. Eduardo has dismissed the accusation as delusional. Jair Bolsonaro, who's under house arrest, denies plotting to overthrow Brazil's current president, Lula da Silva. His trial is due to begin next month.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo Mwepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In our sports headline, Football Kenya Federation appeals to CAF to allow 60% fans in Moi International Sports Centre. And Cricket South Africa and KFC renew partnership, Mini to Mighty campaign this Women's Month. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Right, so we're going to be going to East Africa shortly, but today in 1961 in Kenya, Kenyan colonial authorities formally released Jomo Kenyatta after nearly 9 years in detention, and that's 2 years before independence. And Jomo Kenyatta did eventually lead a very independent Kenya 2 years later. And his son, of course, became president much later. And I think it was, how does one describe it? A family which was larger than life in the end. But he certainly did contribute to gaining Kenya's independence there. So Jomo Kenyatta was released after 9 years in detention by the Kenyan colonial authorities on this day, August 21st, 1961. Right, let's go to East Africa now, where there is a major story that's been playing out there. But we're hoping to get to that story shortly. In the meantime, let's take a look at this. South Africa's inflation rate edged higher in July after sharp increases in utilities and food prices. Statistics South Africa says that headline consumer inflation rose to 3.5% year on year, and that's up 3% from 3% in June. Dimakatso Leshuro has more for us.
The July inflation print came in line with market consensus, buoyed by electricity and water prices, which climbed steeply by 8.9% and 7.1% year-on-year, respectively. On a monthly basis, utilities recorded the steepest rise at 8%, with electricity jumping 10.4% month-on-month, far outpacing headline inflation. July is when most municipalities increase annual prices for utilities in South Africa. Monthly inflation also picked up strongly by 0.9% in July, driven mainly by utilities and housing services, while core inflation, which excludes fuel and food prices, rose slightly to 3% year-on-year, up from 2.9%, with a monthly growth of 0.4%, led by water and housing services. Koketso Mano is a senior economist at First National Bank.
All subcategories, when we include fuel and food, contributed to positive headline monthly pressures. The monthly pressure was driven by water and other housing services. Looking at the other contributors, fuel prices increased in the month of August by 2.6% month on month. However, when you compare to last year, you still see a fuel deflation in the system.
Meanwhile, food prices continue to squeeze households, rising 5.7% year on year. Meat led the gains, though cheaper cooking oils and fresh produce help soften the blow.
Monthly pressure should be muted because we hope that we will continue to see a slowing in food price pressures. Meanwhile, fuel prices should also detract from monthly inflation in the month of August. All of this will be supported by still muted underlying or demand-driven inflation.
Looking ahead, August inflation is likely to remain flat with lower fuel prices that will ease food momentum, helping to contain monthly pressures. But Mano says the fading of base effects will keep annual inflation trending upward.
Even with that, though, you should still see inflation remaining below 4.5%. And this will be supported by, weak oil prices, slow recovery in the domestic economy, a resilient rand. So hopefully we still see inflation at around or below even 3.5% for the year on average. And I guess today's numbers really highlight the impact of, these elevated utility costs on headline inflation or the lived experience of South Africans.
With the South African Reserve Bank now aiming to anchor inflation closer to 3%, monetary policy may have to work harder to contain inflation, possibly keeping rates higher for longer than the economy would like.
It will be quite helpful if most prices are able to adjust accordingly to suit the lower inflation objective. Without that, it will be very difficult for the Monetary Policy Committee, to guide inflation expectations lower when people's lived experience or daily costs are rising significantly when you look at electricity and other costs. So it is still a very heated debate around administered costs. But should government fall in line with this lower objective, it will be something that really supports the efficacy with which monetary policy achieves it.
For now, South Africa's inflation remains in check, but there are a number of headwinds which may prove to be the thorn in the side of both consumers and policymakers. For Channel Africa News, I'm Dimagazo Leshoro in Johannesburg.
Let's go to East Africa now, where business activity across Kampala has ground to a virtual standstill as traders initiate a strike, shutting down shops, particularly around key arcades. The strike marks a renewed wave of frustration over high tariffs, heavy taxation on garments, rising rents, the burden of EFRIS, that's the new electronic fiscal receipting and invoicing system, and a perceived surge in competition from foreign, particularly Chinese retailers. Now, some traders have even called for the resignation of the URA Commissioner General, General Msungizi Rujoki. Several people have been arrested amid enforcement efforts, and a key meeting with the Prime Minister was abruptly adjourned when arrested traders were not released. Now, the strike has been polarizing because some business districts have actually stayed open whilst others remain shuttered. Now, to unpack what's going on, we're now joined by Ugandan lawyer and social activist Godwin Toko. Thanks very much indeed for joining us, Mr. Toko.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you too.
All right, so I wonder if you can start by describing maybe what the mood looks like in Kampala this morning. Are there areas still affected by a shutdown? What's the state of play today?
So the latest news is that there's been a resolution reached between the Prime Minister, Robina Nabanja, who met the traders yesterday, and the traders have agreed to open up their shops temporarily as they hope that the government meets its side of the agreement they reached yesterday. So the mood is getting back to normal, but we just have to see how the day goes. Sometimes such promises are made, and then within a couple of days, they go back to where they were at the start. So this time, we just have to wait and see how it goes.
I know I mentioned a few things in the introduction there, but take us through what are the central grievances that these traders have and why it's affecting their lives so much.
So the first one is the competition from the Chinese. Uganda has a virtually open investment policy that allows literally anyone to come and invest in Uganda. So you have the Chinese coming in here and investing so heavily in the textile sector, in construction sector, and they're selling all these household products. And that has, of course, affected so many Ugandans who were already engaged in that sector, in those different sectors. But the question then is that there's this feeling that in the government's desperation to attract foreign investment, they end up giving preferential treatment to the foreign investors at the expense of the local investors. So when the government brings an investor, many times when an investor gets here, they meet the president and they're given free land, they're given tax holidays, they're given all these, so many things. There are industrial parks set up in the country that are virtually run by the Chinese across the country. So yes, that was the first point of contention, why the government seems to be so much into giving these benefits to the foreign investors at the expense of the local investors. But now, investors came here and they started making, for instance, in the textile industry. When a factory makes all these clothings, it does not go around selling them. It needs the local people that have the shops to sell them. So the president literally got to a point where he was trying to put a ban on importation of clothing from outside Uganda. That was, of course, supposed to spur local investment by having these Ugandan traders then sell the clothes of those Chinese. But then the Ugandan traders were saying that they were getting a raw deal. They would get the clothes, say, from China or elsewhere at much cheaper prices and then make a profit. But if they got them from Uganda, the cost seemed high and that would eat into their profits. So that became a serious point of contention. Then there was, you mentioned IFRIs. So for a long time, there was a bit of a gentleman's agreement, I could say, between the government and the traders in Uganda, that the government, while taxing the traders, did not go all the way. So there were so many loopholes that so many traders exploited. But now if you put with IFRIs in place, the traders are going to be in a situation where the government looks at literally every sale they make, everything they do. I was in South Africa last year and someone told me how there was once an arrangement to have payment of taxes for the transportation using cards. And the taxis fought back saying that would have the government looking into whatever they were making in terms of profit, and then they could be heavily taxed. Now, I could relate those two. It is similar to that. So IFRIs is basically the government going to look at every single transaction and taxing the traders. And the traders have this other thing of saying, well, what does the government do for me? Which is a sentiment also held by so many Ugandans, that while the government is taking all these taxes, there's a lot of corruption, there's a lot of, the roads are bad, so many things are not going right, and so they feel like they're getting a road deal if they pay all those taxes. So briefly, I could pack it like that, unless there's something specific. I don't want to go on and on.
All right, so let's look at IFRIs. Are we suggesting that the traders don't want to pay any tax at all?
Not really. I think the traders want to pay taxes. With IFRIs also comes other issues, because like I said, it's literally the government looking into every single transaction. I've watched a video where the spokesperson of Kasita, which is the Kampala City Traders Association, was basically arguing about the right to privacy and saying that even in business, there should be right to privacy. The government should not look at every single thing I do, because the argument is that while I can pay taxes, I should pay taxes under the current arrangement. And it is true that so many loopholes do exist, but over time, URA has worked, URA being the Uganda Revenue Authority, which is charged with collecting taxes in Uganda, has worked over time to ensure that many of these loopholes are filled in, and the tax revenue has been going up over the years. But now, IFRIs, if it is implemented in the current form, and I understand why URA wants to implement it, because, well, there are those loopholes, but if it is implemented, it's going to be, it's just more than taxes. It's about looking into every single transaction. It's about getting perhaps more taxes, because there are also disagreements of the taxation. Sometimes the traders say, the government side can seem like I've sold, but in reality, I've made a supply to a person I deal with in the DRC who takes these things on credit and then pays me after like 2 years or after a year. So while if IFRIs is implemented, it will be shown on the side of URA that these are sales. It will not be shown that these are sales on credit that can be paid for later. So there are those questions up and down, but yes, I don't think the traders don't want to pay taxes. I just think it's the way it's being implemented.
Last question on this IFRIs thing. I believe that they're also concerned about the cost of the EFD devices and maybe even the complexity of the system itself.
Yes, so there's that concern as well. One, the Uganda Revenue Authority through the government wants the traders to be the ones to meet the costs of purchasing the devices that will be used to implement IFRIs. And that has been a very, very serious point of contention. And then there's the part where a lot of Ugandan traders downtown. These are very, very successful traders by Ugandan standards. They reckon hundreds of thousands of dollars every year. But most of them are really not educated. In fact, the Ugandan system, the Ugandan outlook of business is such that the most successful people in business tend to be those who are least educated. So there are those questions of how will they manage IFRIs? And then, of course, URA answered and said, you have to employ someone. And then some of them are saying, no, I can't employ someone because this for me is a very personal business. I run this at a very personal level. Yeah, so it's all those coming into play. There's that as well. Do we buy these, and when we buy them, who meets the costs? And when it malfunctions, who meets the repair costs? Isn't that an additional cost to my business? And if that is the cost for thousands of businesses in Uganda, how does that affect the businesses that I'm running? If I'm running, say, 100 businesses and I have to buy these devices for all those businesses, yes. So there's that too.
So I think you started by giving us what government response has been. The Prime Minister has made some promises, and that's why things look normal today. But people have been arrested in the meantime. What's their fate at the moment?
Yes, so part of the negotiation is that those who are arrested be released. And the government has said it will look into that. Now, that means they may be released. That means they may not be released, but most likely they'll be released. I must just add, Peter, before I forget that this is an election year in Uganda. We're having elections early next year. Already, right now, people are picking forms for presidential nominations. So maybe the timing of this is also important because I think the traders see that they have an upper hand in bargaining right now. Our Ugandan elections tend to be a very, very hot contested subject. Even when the winner, quote unquote, is always known because we've had the same president for 40 years now. But yes, he goes all the way to ensure that he is in good books of people around elections. So I think the traders may have that card on their end that they can use that also, the fact that elections are fast approaching, to get those people released and to get so many gains on their end.
Has the government got a track record of keeping its promises?
No, not at all. Not at all. But then, like I said, the traders know that they can make some gains. So they have all these demands about the Chinese, about selling the Chinese products forcefully or under coercion. They have these demands about releasing the people. It is definite that it will be a case of give and take. They will make some successes and some tremendous gains, but I don't think that the government will keep all the promises, especially about IFRIs, because Uganda's debt burden has really spiked over the last few years. Uganda has several infrastructure projects that are being undertaken and there's no money for them. The government had aid cuts from the World Bank over the Anti-Homosexuality Act. So there is in terms, the fiscal policy has been quite tight. Like the government has been pushed to the wall. So the government is looking for all the monies it needs. And like I said, it's an election year. Elections are very, very costly in Uganda. I think it was in 2015 when there was a study that showed that the president of Uganda was spending more in that campaign, in a campaign, I think, compared to Trump, who was campaigning in the US for a particular period. So all these things bring in a lot of money, and that is going to push the government and the URI to the point where they need the money to fund these things and the projects and all that's going on, and to fill up the gaps and to pay the debts. And I don't think the traders are going to have IFRIs taken away forever. It may be taken away as a reprieve for the meantime, but I think eventually, most likely next year after the elections, it will be implemented.
So not all the traders shut down and sort of lined up with the striking traders. What does that tell us about the general feeling? Is this a divisive issue amongst the traders?
Yes, the Ugandan society is so stratified. We are always divided. So if traders in Kampala lay down their tools, you find that traders in some other part of the country, probably where the president comes from, or traders who are aligned to the president's ruling party within the city, will keep their shops open. So it's always hard to speak from a unified language. In fact, many times when one section of traders will close their shop, there will be another section of traders saying, "Oh, you shouldn't close your shops. You guys are playing politics. We can meet these people. We can have these things resolved amicably via negotiations." So that is again playing out. For instance, there was a report in the Daily Monitor, the leading independent newspaper in Uganda, saying that the shops in Western Uganda were open and business was moving on as normal at the peak of this traders' strike in Kampala. Now, Western Uganda is where the president comes from, but that may not be the only reason. The other reasons may be that, well, they are not facing all the issues. Perhaps they're not facing the challenge with the Chinese. And I must say that what I forgot earlier to say is that one of the problems with the Chinese traders that the Ugandan traders see, the indigenous Ugandan traders see, is that the Chinese can literally do any business. So you could find you have shops in Kampala run by Chinese competing with Ugandan traders, selling maybe what, shoes, maybe apparel, like the most basic. I know so many countries protect their indigenous businesses and say this particular sector is not for foreign businesses. Tanzania did that recently, expelling Ugandans and Kenyans and saying they shouldn't engage in petty trade. But in Uganda, Chinese foreigners of any kind can engage in any form of trade. And that may be one of the reasons why the West are not striking, because it may not be as prevalent in the West as it is in Kampala.
So what we know across the continent, small traders and many that are in the informal part of the economy actually are the ones that create jobs and employment. Is that a similar scenario playing out in Uganda, that these small traders, if they carry more of a burden in terms of costs, that it could have an effect A, on the economy, and B, on things like job creation?
Yes, if it is sustained for a long period of time. But I must also say that we've had traders striking several times. And many times it's for a couple of days, they get some gains, and then they go back to business as usual. And I don't see this one playing out differently. Because of the election, they'll probably get many more gains, but then they'll go back to business as usual. And I think around this time next year, again, they'll close their shops and strike. The other thing, you see, when these traders strike, the government has this approach of the carrot and the stick. One of the sticks it normally uses is to work with the landlords. So the arcades in town, the malls, they are owned by super rich, rich business people, most of whom, given the setup of the Ugandan business scene, have inclination to the ruling party. Now, because of that, many times for them, they'll put out a statement and say, well, if you close your shops, we don't care. We need the rent at the end of the month. And for the smallest of traders, many times that compels them to open up their shops, because they are looking at paying millions of shillings. That is very little if compared to rands. Our currency is much lower. But yes, millions of shillings at the end of the month, and they have to make that money. So when they get to that point where they are pushed, they'll open up. So I don't think this will last for long. But if this had stayed on for long, let's say 2 months, that would have a very serious ripple effect on the economy because of employment, because of access to goods. And it's not just in Uganda. Uganda being where it is where a lot of people in South Sudan, it's the supply chain for a lot of people in South Sudan, the supply chain for a lot of people in the Central African Republic, and the supply chain for a lot of people, especially in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo and parts of Rwanda. So it would have a ripple effect on the region, even in terms of the supply chain. But like I said, I don't think this is going to be sustained or this is going to last for long. As you've already seen with the Prime Minister's promises, they've already agreed to open their shops and get back to work.
So, what do you think this moment says about the future of small-scale trade, regulatory policy, and local business resilience in Uganda?
Yes, so I must say that Uganda operates a very informal sector. Most of these local traders, the way they operate is that they are very informal. That's why you're seeing they're having that kind of resistance against IFRIs. If it was like this big supermarkets, they wouldn't have had it. Now, what this says about the future of business of this kind of business in Uganda is that there's always going to be this contestation. The government wants to get as much taxes as it can, but to get those taxes, the government needs to formalize trade, to move more to the formal bit and move away from the informal sector. Now, this is not new. That fight has been there for a while. The resistance has also been there for a while. What I see is that this is going to continue even much longer. The government is going to try to push the traders more to the other side of getting formal, but the traders are going to insist on being at this other end of not being formal because there are benefits there. Like I said, not all the taxes will be tracked. Some sales will not be tracked. So many loopholes will exist for them to exploit and then make more gains in terms of profits. So I see that playing out for a long period of time. That's why I said that around this time next year, probably there will be another strike. And there was a strike last year. There was a strike the year before. Sometimes they are multiple in a year. They can be as many as 3 in a year. So it is in many ways you could say business as usual in Uganda. It's the norm now. Many people are used to it. When the traders announce a strike, many people will stock up. Many up-country traders will stock up, knowing that, well, for the next 1 week or so, there will be nothing. But they don't stock up beyond a week because they know that it comes and goes.
Godwin, thank you so much for that comprehensive analysis of the situation on the ground. Let's hope they find each other, and as you say, perhaps we'll have another cycle of this in the near future. But thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, and thank you very much for having me. Have a good day.
Thank you. That's Godwin Toko. He's a lawyer in Uganda and social activist, giving us an update on this strike that the traders in the country embarked upon yesterday. And it looks like the Prime Minister has managed to convince them to open up their shops, stop the strike for the time being. And we'll see where that story takes us. We'll keep on top of that for you. It's 8:30, which means it's time for your news headlines. Here's Jwalani Tulongwe.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Making headlines. The site intelligence group says Al-Qaeda-linked militants have killed 21 soldiers during coordinated attacks in Mali. The DRC's Foreign Minister Tereska Kwamba Wagner has accused Rwanda of training the M23 rebels. And finally, the U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance says European countries must pay the lion's share of costs for Ukraine's security guarantees. I will have details on these and other stories at 9 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Okay, let's catch you up with the sports. Here's Figile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
We kick off with football news ongoing in Tanzania, Uganda and Kenya. The Football Kenya Federation has formally appealed to Confederation of African Football, CAF, to lift the sanction which slashed fans allowed at the Moi International Sports Center, Kasarani, to 60%. Sports Cabinet Secretary Salim Mvurya revealed the new development after overseeing final preparations undertaken by the local organizing committee, the LOC, for Friday's quarterfinal clash between Kenya and Madagascar. The CS exhibited confidence in the preparations undertaken by LOC as he confirmed there is a chance fans will be able to attend the game scheduled for Friday in full capacity. Part of the reason the CS is confident CAF would review the sanction is because there were no incidents during Harambee Stars' last group game against Zambia. Harambee Stars, who topped Group A, played all their group matches at the Moi International Sports Center, Kasarani. For the opening group games, CAF allowed the stadium to be filled to its 44,000 capacity, but a series of incidents forced the federation to keep the tickets to just 27,000 for the final group game against Zambia. KFC extends their sponsorships to include the Proteas women's team and the team's preparations ahead of the World Cup in India in September. KFC has had a long-standing relationship with cricket through their mini cricket program. It will now also be the title sponsors of South Africa's national women's team. It's exciting news for the Proteas as they add the final touches to their preparations ahead of the Women's World Cup in India and Sri Lanka starting next month. Proteas wicketkeeper Sinalo Jafta agrees that the program has been invaluable in introducing cricket to children from all walks of life.
KFC has always been within cricket, and I think the growth that you've seen coming in from grassroots level, I think it's very important that they've actually been the feeding force, because you start with mini cricket before you go to hardball cricket. So I think when they actually coming in as an official partner just cements the intention with the grassroots level.
With 50 over Women's World Cup co-hosted by India and Sri Lanka looming large, the Proteas women are in the process of adding the final touches to their preparations. South Africa made it to the semi-finals in the previous tournament in New Zealand in 2022, eventually losing to England.
Yeah, we're heading off to Durban now for a 10-day camp. then obviously there's just to fine-tune the different elements. And I mean, coach has mentioned it a million times that by the time we get to the World Cup, he's already mapped out our journey for us. It's just about going out there and having fun and just playing fearless cricket.
Basketball news. Nigeria's run in the 2025 AfroBasket ended on Wednesday in Luanda when they lost to Senegal 91-75. Nigeria became the second team to reach the quarterfinals undefeated after Cote d'Ivoire to see their AfroBasket titles aspirations come to an abrupt end. With this victory for Senegal, they returned to the AfroBasket semi-finals for the fifth time since the 2013 edition of the tournament in Abidjan. Let's end with tennis news. Carlos Alcaraz heads to the US Open in his now familiar role as chief challenger to defending champion Jannik Sinner, and the Spaniard will be driven this year by the twin pursuit of Grand Slam glory and the world number one ranking. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fire Dungwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Vue d'Afrique avec Joël Mouteba.
Cette peur d'un point de non-retour nucléaire suffit-elle selon vous à légitimer une telle offensive, Monsieur Talati?
Absolument pas du tout. Cela fait plus de 30 ans que l'Israël crie haut et fort sur les toits, où il veut se faire entendre que l'Iran serait à 1 an pour obtenir l'arme nucléaire. Parfois, l'Iran serait à 6 mois, parfois l'Iran serait à 2 semaines pour obtenir son arme nucléaire. Et curieusement, jusqu'à ce jour, il n'y a toujours aucune preuve que l'Iran a obtenu cette arme nucléaire en dépit des déclarations d'Israël et de certaines puissances parfois.
Vue d'Afrique. Du lundi au vendredi de 15h à 16h, temps universel.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Now, a non-profit social enterprise, Harambe Youth Employment... all right, in fact, that's coming up shortly because right now it's time for your business news. I'm getting ahead of myself. And we say good morning to Nosipho Zuma.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. In your business news this hour, the Federation of Unions of South Africa, FEDUSA, has welcomed the Department of Employment and Labour's move to reinstate powers of labour inspectors to enforce pension fund payments. FEDUSA says this tackles widespread theft of workers' retirement savings by dishonest employers in industries like cleaning, security and local government, where unpaid contributions have ballooned into billions, leaving many workers in poverty. FEDUSA General Secretary is Rifda Ajam.
In the past, when workers have gone to access the very elements to determine what the levels of contributions have been, they have found with absolute horror that those pensions have not been paid over to the funds, albeit the fact that they have been deducted from their salaries. So this new enforcement mechanism certainly allows them to access, to see what is available, and making sure that we can hold hands with all the relevant authorities to make sure that those defaults are no longer as extensive as what they are.
South Africa's Tourism Minister Patricia de Lille says she will tentatively appoint one or more people to manage the affairs of South African Tourism Board until a new board is appointed. Now, this follows her dissolution of the board yesterday. De Lille has cited its failure to address the legality of the procedure it followed to convene a special board meeting earlier this month. Now, this is because only a board chairperson is empowered to convene such a meeting. De Lille says the board's decision to put the CEO Nombulelo Guliu on precautionary suspension was also unlawful. South Africa's Water and Sanitation Minister Phemi Majodina is in Lesotho to conduct oversight visits to a number of projects, including the Podihadi Dam, the Sinku Bridge and the Lesotho Highlands Water Tunnel. She says South Africa has invested billions in these projects. The Lesotho Highlands Water Project is a bi-nation initiative between the two countries designed to transfer water from Lesotho's highlands to South Africa's Gauteng province. It involves the construction of dams, tunnels and hydroelectric power station. Majodina says South Africa is also paying for the water it gets from Lesotho.
We have invested 53 billion for this project, and this project was delayed for 9 years. The cost since then escalated to 53 billion. But also, we are not taking this water for free. We are paying royalties. We're paying hundreds of millions per month for this water. So I want to dismiss the myth that we are just taking Lesotho people for granted. That is not true. We are paying.
Kenya is in talks with China to convert a dollar-denominated railway loan into Chinese yuan. China is Kenya's biggest bilateral lender, and the country took on the debt to construct a $5 billion high-speed railway, which is one of the country's largest ever infrastructure projects. The standard gauge railway line was launched in May 2017 during the administration of Kenya's fourth president, Uhuru Kenyatta. And finally, oil prices have gained slightly as larger than expected declines in crude oil and fuel inventories in the U.S. Brent crude futures were up 13 US cents to $66.97 a barrel after gaining 1.6% in the previous session. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures rose 15 cents to $62.86 after climbing 1.4% on Wednesday. Your financial indicators: $1 US in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 534. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 39. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 325. And in Zambia, it's 23 kwacha 29. The BRICS countries: $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 ril 48. Russia is 80 rubles 48. India is 87 rupees 04. In China at 7 yuan 18. And in South Africa, $1 is trading at 17 rand 68. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,336 and platinum at $1,335 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $67.12 a barrel. Now, for any business news stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I'm Nosipho Zuma.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go. The KwaZulu-Natal Convention Bureau, in collaboration with Milvest Advisory and the city of Umhlathuze, bring you the 2025 Tourism Investment Forum Africa. As a global platform for local action, the Tourism Investment Africa aims to promote the secondary and tertiary cities and regions as attractive investment and tourism hubs. Be part of the movement transforming tourism in Africa. Join us for the TIFA 2025 from August 27 to 29 at Tembela Venue, Richards Bay, KZN, South Africa. Good morning starts here. Rise and shine on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Now, a non-profit social enterprise, Harambee Youth Employment Accelerator, which works with partners to find solutions for youth unemployment challenges in South Africa, is shining a spotlight on how employers, policymakers and others can ensure that their investments work harder to benefit women in their quarterly Breaking Barriers report. Now, the reports focus this Women's Month on the economic inclusion of women The organisation shared some of the report insights with Channel Africa at the Women's Month Media Day event, which was held in their offices in Johannesburg. Sisi Sekhalo was there and filed this report.
Among the highlights of the report is the need to address the barriers that keep youth out of employment, especially women. Head of Research at Harambee Youth Employment Accelerator, Victoria Duncan, has expressed that young people face quite a few barriers to labour market participation, like data cost and transport. But for women, she says it is even more difficult.
Women experience additional barriers in terms of safety, in terms of the disproportionate responsibility of unpaid care work. And so when employers think about how they're wanting to structure work to make it inclusive, by meeting women where they are and addressing these barriers by providing flexible work or providing transport solutions or decent earnings, they are in fact actually breaking barriers for all young people. So everyone is benefiting.
Another insight of the report is that women are not riding the wave in growth sectors, but they are powering it. The report indicates that sectors such as tourism and global business services are already experiencing considerable growth, and it's thanks in part due to the inclusion of women. Duncan again.
We highlighted 3 growth sectors that we believe are growing and providing job creation. One being global business services, the other tourism, and the third the care economy. And each of those sectors are experiencing growth, but they're also hiring a high number of young women and women in general at scale, which is very exciting.
The National Youth Development Agency, NYDA, was present at the Women's Month Media Day. The program manager for National Youth Service at NYDA, Takalani Salimani, says young people can access them through their website, through sayouth.mobi, and also they can do walk-ins at their branches located across the country. Their focus is on youth in general, she elaborates.
So our initiatives are targeted at young people in general, but of course we do have a gender lens and a gender interest. What we are seeing with the National Youth Service program is that across the 90,000 opportunities that have been offered in the past 3 phases, almost 70% of participation has been from women, young women. So it is, absolutely encouraging because the National Youth Service is not formal employment. It's actually an opportunity for a young person to do 16 hours of almost volunteer work within their community. So you are giving of yourself, service within your community, gaining skills, but service that actually benefits service delivery. And also we are helping you to also transition into longer term opportunities.
Kanyisile Mlanzana is a young woman who has broken the barriers of youth unemployment in South Africa. At the age of 29, she's running 2 businesses which were born out of solving problems in her township of Kutsong in Gauteng province. She was assisted by Harambee Youth Employment Accelerator.
With the Harambee Youth Solving Youth Issues program, we got stipends for participating and doing what they asked us to do. There was a program, a 4-month program. So with the stipends, we took the stipends that we got 180 every week. So we take the 180s and then combine them, then started the businesses. So we didn't eat the stipends, but we invested them in our business.
For Channel Africa, I'm Sisi Sekhalo in Johannesburg, South Africa.
The Committee to Protect Journalists has called on authorities in Guinea-Bissau to rescind an August 15, 2025 order effectively suspending the work of the Portuguese state-owned news outlets, Lusa and RTP, and expelling Portuguese journalists working with them. CPJ Africa Program Coordinator Mutoki Momo says that Guinea-Bissau's closure of Lusa and RTP is the latest sign of government's hostility to the media and does raise significant concern about the public's access to independent journalism ahead of the country's general elections in November. Mutoki joins us now to discuss this a little further. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
So this is a major concern for journalism, isn't it, in Guinea-Bissau?
Yes, it is quite a major concern because when you see these two outlets being dispelled just months before the general elections, you have to ask yourself what's behind this, and what can journalists who will remain operating in the country, local journalists who don't always have the same access to the international sphere as foreign journalists do sometimes, what will those local journalists expect as we go into elections? So it is certainly very worrying.
What have the authorities offered as a reason for the suspension?
So this is part of the problem with this the closure, the order to close RTP and LUSA, is that there's no public explanation that has been provided, or no detailed one at least. We've seen both the president and the prime minister repeatedly declining to answer questions about this, promising some statement which is yet to come. And we've had the prime minister, Kamara, simply saying that this is a matter of sovereignty. The president himself saying this is a matter of between Guinea-Bissau and Portugal. Now, when you're closing media outlets that are so important to the ecosystem of news reporting, and when you're saying you're giving Portuguese journalists who work with them days to leave the country, certainly more is expected than simply saying this is sovereignty. This is something between us, between this country and that country. There has been no explanation.
I think you've partly answered my next question, but what does this tell us about the general state of affairs in terms of media freedom in Guinea-Bissau? And have you noticed a trend of decline over time?
The context of this is that Guinea-Bissau has been in a state of political tension, high political tension, for almost 2 years now. Of course, if we cast our eyes more historically, there's always been this history of patterns of political turmoil since for decades. But in 2023, at the end of 2023, we saw President Mbalo dissolving parliament in Guinea-Bissau. And what has followed since then is really heightened political tension, elections repeatedly postponed. Mbalo was elected for a 5-year term in 2019, but because elections have been postponed repeatedly, he's remained in office. We're expecting elections now in November. Now, with this background of political tension, political turmoil, we've seen journalists being caught in the crossfire, so to say. Last year, we documented in 2 big reports that Mbalo's own fractious relationship with the press, often coming into verbally denigrating journalists who ask him questions instead of answering them, while at the same time we were documenting journalists being obstructed, being denied access to press conferences, and even in some instances being attacked by police and government officials. And if you go again even back further, late 2023, we saw that following the dissolution of parliament, there were armed raids on state broadcasters, which is something you never want to see journalists having to suffer, and which is really an intimidatory tactic. So this is the broader context, the broader political and media freedom context in which these shutdowns of LUSA and RTP are happening.
So, I guess the biggest theme in all of this is that there is a political story that's playing out, and a president who wants to cement his grip on power.
It seems there's a political story that's playing out, and that's going to play out. And perhaps, again, I need to re-emphasize the authorities haven't explained themselves, and it's always risky when you try to speculate what's going on in people's minds. But the actions that we're seeing point to I wish for the political story to play out without the presence of critical or independent observation of the media. That's what we can read from their actions.
So, as the CPJ, what are you calling for?
So we're calling for a couple of very simple things. The order should be rescinded. The shutdown of LUSA and RTP should be withdrawn, and we're also deeply worried for the safety of other journalists operating in the country, for their safety and their freedom. As we go to elections, there should be guarantees, and this is something that we've seen in other political contexts, that political actors will commit to protecting journalists and preserving press freedom as they go into elections. There should be guarantees of that. That's a very minimum requirement. And those guarantees should subsequently be adhered to. But beyond that, we would really call on, the government in Guinea-Bissau, including the president, to really change this very aggressive culture against the media, and to recognize that if Guinea-Bissau is going to be moving forward in a democratic way, local, international journalists must be allowed to be part of the information ecosystem. They must be allowed to ensure that the public in Guinea-Bissau has access to independent, to critical, to opposing views, but also that the international community has access to information about what's going on in Guinea-Bissau.
I guess sometimes in situations like this, foreign media can be an easy target. Local journalists, what's the state of affairs for them? I think you gave us a hint earlier.
So I would actually quibble a little bit with the statement about the easy target, because what we see is that yes, governments, when the going goes tough, do sometimes start on foreign journalists and maybe deny them access, maybe say get out of the country. This is something that we've seen previously in Ethiopia, in Uganda, and I suppose now in Guinea-Bissau. But foreign journalists sometimes have a privilege that local journalists do not have. They can leave. They have passports, they have visas that allow them to leave. Local journalists are vulnerable in a different way, because this is the country where they live, this is where they operate, this is where their families are. Acts of repression can have a more profound impact sometimes, because there isn't anywhere for them to go easily. I'm not saying it's not possible, but it's not easy. Leaving means upending their lives, leaving their families behind, and might not be possible. Sometimes people don't even have passports, let alone the necessary visas. So local journalists are vulnerable in this way. As I've said earlier in this interview, what we've seen is that there's really been a difficult relationship between the government and journalists, including local journalists who work for these Portuguese outlets. We mustn't forget that. We've seen in the past some of them being denied access. And as I mentioned earlier, we've also seen other acts of aggression against the press that includes local media,
Right.
such as the late 2023 raid on state-owned media, by the way. And last year, several times when journalists were being denied access or assaulted in the course of doing their jobs.
Mutoki, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you very, very much indeed for that update and giving us a sense of the sad state of affairs in Guinea-Bissau regarding journalism there. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you. That's Mutoki Momo, who's Africa Program Coordinator at CPJ. Okay, after the 9 o'clock news, one of our favourite programmes, and might I add, award-winning, On the Move is coming live with Benjamin and Palesa, and they join me now to tell me what's coming up on the programme. Top of the morning to both of you.
Hey, how you doing, Peter?
Always joyous. Always joyous.
Yeah, we're loving that smile, man. Let's look at what we're going to be starting off the show with today. We're going to be focusing on our Women's Month conversations. This is a cool one. We're going to be speaking to a lady by the name of Fortune Arinze from Nigeria, the founder of Auto Girl Limited, a leading car rental kind of marketplace space. So looking forward to that one, to actually see a woman in a very male-dominated industry. And we're going to be speaking about her resilience, her profession, her reputation, but also how she has navigated her leadership in the automotive industry. So that must be a good one that we're going to be starting off. And it's Tuesday today. No, it's Thursday today. So we're going to be... no, because she came back yesterday, you see. So I thought yesterday was Monday, you see. So our becoming feature today, we're going to be looking at a very interesting subject matter. Can you actually find wholeness outside of a relationship? You know, a lot of people are defined whether they're in a relationship or not. Yeah.
So that's just some of the conversations, but we'll be wrapping it up with our parenting and family feature, speaking about how you can create a family culture of accountability.
My goodness, wow. You guys tackle such fascinating and interesting subjects. So that's On the Move, coming up after the 9 o'clock news. And that's how we come to the end of today's edition of Rise and Shine. Let's do it again tomorrow morning, bright and early, 6 o'clock Central African time. It's 9 o'clock. It's time for your news. Here's Jwalani Tulongwete.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Top stories: Asawa Al-Qaeda-linked militants have killed 21 soldiers during coordinated attacks in Mali, and the US says European countries must pay for Ukraine's security guarantees. Good morning. The site intelligence group says Al-Qaeda militants have killed 21 soldiers during coordinated attacks in Mali. The jihadist organization JNIM says it captured 2 soldiers, seized 15 military vehicles and more than 50 weapons during the wide operation. Yesterday, Mali's army declined to provide a toll, but says its outposts at Farabuhu and Birikiwere came under a simultaneous attack on Tuesday. Sego, a strategic hub in south-central Mali, has seen repeated clashes between jihadist groups, government forces and allied militias amid a years-long insurgency that has spread across the arid Sahel region. The DRC's Foreign Minister Therese Kwamba-Wagner has accused Rwanda of training the M23 rebels. Kwamba-Wagner's comments come as the Congolese government says new accounts of atrocities in the east of the country show M23 rebels have not respected the commitments they made in a ceasefire deal last month. Rwanda has again denied the accusation. Speaking to the BBC, Kwamba-Wagner says her government was appalled but not surprised by reports suggesting that the rebels had killed scores of ethnic Hutu civilians.
We are not surprised because this is not an isolated incident. The occupation of eastern DRC by the M23 with the support of the RDF has been documented over years by the United Nations and other entities, and this occupation has throughout been characterized by atrocities targeting civilians.
The Benchmarks Foundation in South Africa says that illegal mining is an economic problem which police cannot address. This as police intensify their Operation Valumkoti, which is aimed at eradicating illegal mining in the country. Critics say the operation is failing to address the underlying issue and identify the kingpins. The foundation's researcher David van Wyk says most of the illegal miners were retrenched without proper pension packages.
Tens of thousands of workers are being retrenched every year. Many of them are being retrenched without receiving their pensions. 42 billion rands are locked up in pension funds that have not reached mine workers. Apart from that, the moment a mine worker loses his job, they effectively become an illegal immigrant because the mining company shuts down. Very often the mine workers are not even informed that the mining company is shut down. They lose their work permits and so on, and they don't have money to go home because they've not received their pensions and unemployment benefits, and so they remain behind in informal settlements.
The US Vice President J.D. Vance says European countries must pay the lion's share of costs for Ukraine's security guarantees. Vance says it's their continent and their security, and that President Donald Trump has made it clear that they have to step up. Yesterday, NATO military commanders met in Washington to discuss security guarantees for Ukraine in the event of a peace deal with Russia. Vance says two questions needed to be answered.
In some ways, it's very simple, but in some ways, it's very complicated. Number one is Ukraine wants to know that it's not going to get invaded again by Russia. It wants to know that it's got territorial integrity long into the future. The Russians want certain pieces of territory, most of which they've occupied, but some of which they haven't. So that is really where the meat of the negotiation is.
This week on Channel Africa Conversations podcast, host Peter Ndoro speaks to Executive Director of the Centre for Accelerated Women's Economic Empowerment and co-founder of Enad Bank, Dr. Nigest Haley. Enad Bank was established in 2008 and is the brainchild of 9 visionary Ethiopian women who wanted to create a bank that not only serves all Ethiopians but places a special emphasis on empowering women economically.
Because of such loan facilities, women are able to diversify their businesses. Startups were able to establish new businesses. They were able to create employment opportunities. Those that are involved in export were able to generate foreign currency, which the country needs most. So quite lots of benefits. Women became so much empowered.
Be sure to catch the full interview on our YouTube page at Channel Africa 1. And now recapping the top story, the SAWA, the site intelligence group, says Al-Qaeda-linked militants have killed 21 soldiers during coordinated attacks in Mali. For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo Wepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. It is that time for us to move things on. I'm sure you've gotten your good morning greetings from Peter Ndoro. Thanks to him for making sure that we got a bit of a snippet of what's happening